The tea was still warm when my grandson spoke his first words in 6 years. I remember the exact moment. I remember the steam curling lazily from the porcelain cup Victoria had prepared for me. I remember the way Oliver's small hand shot out across the table, his grip clamping onto my wrist with surprising force. And I remember the sound that tore from a throat I believed was sealed forever. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. From that biting December morning when everything changed. The taxi arrived at 6:15. I stood on the front porch with Oliver pressed against my side, watching Victoria and her parents load their designer luggage into the trunk. 2 weeks in Paris, she had said. A lavish Christmas gift from her parents. How generous of them. The morning air bit at my cheeks. December in Connecticut was never gentle, but this cold felt different. Sharper somehow. It felt like a warning. Oliver stood close to me. Too close. His hand found mine in the pre-dawn darkness, and I felt his fingers squeeze. Tight. Tighter than usual. I looked down at him. His eyes were fixed on his mother. They weren't filled with love, nor were they filled with his usual protective blankness. There was something else there. A sharp, terrified awareness I couldn't quite name. 2 weeks, Victoria said, smoothing the lapels of her cashmere coat as she clicked toward us in her heels. Her smile was perfect. It was always perfect. That smile had fooled everyone for 6 years. It had fooled me too. Or maybe I had just wanted to be fooled. Are you sure you can handle him, Eleanor? I know he can be... difficult. Difficult. That was the word she always used. She spoke as if my grandson were a leaky faucet or a scheduling conflict to be managed rather than a child to be loved. I smiled back. It was the smile I had perfected over 6 years of living with this woman in my own home. The home Harold and I had built together. The home where we raised Marcus. The home that should have been filled with the chaotic laughter of grandchildren, but instead was suffocated by this cold, careful silence. He is my grandson. We will be fine. Victoria leaned down to Oliver's level. I watched her manicured fingers grip his small shoulders, digging in just a little too hard. I saw Oliver flinch. It was microscopic. Most people would have missed it. But I had been studying my grandson for 6 years. I knew every twitch, every shudder, every silent scream hidden behind those vacant eyes. Be good for Grandma, she whispered, her voice like silk over steel, but I heard the edge in it. Remember what we talked about. Oliver did not respond. He never responded. That was the point, wasn't it? My grandson had not spoken a single syllable since he was barely 3 years old. Selective mutism, the doctors called it. A trauma response to losing his father. I had accepted that explanation. We all had. What choice did we have? The taxi pulled away, tires crunching on the gravel. I waved. Oliver did not. He just stood there, a statue in a winter coat, watching the red taillights dissolve into the gray morning mist, his hand still gripping mine as if he were afraid I might float away if he let go. Something shifted in the air. I could feel it physically. It was the way the atmosphere changes when a storm breaks. Come inside, sweetheart, I said softly. I'll make us some breakfast. He followed me into the kitchen. The house felt different already, lighter, as if the walls themselves could finally exhale now that Victoria was gone. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel the prickle of eyes on the back of my neck. I busied myself with eggs and toast while Oliver sat at the kitchen table. He had his sketchbook out, the one he carried everywhere like a shield. Drawing was his language now, his only way of speaking to a world that had hurt him. I used to hate that sketchbook. It felt like a constant reminder of everything we had lost. But now, looking at the bent head and the focused scratching of the pencil, I felt a surge of protectiveness. I talked to him the way I always did. One-sided conversations that filled the empty spaces. Your grandfather used to make the best scrambled eggs, I said, stirring the pan. Soft and creamy. I never could get them quite right, but I keep trying. 34 years of marriage, and he never did teach me his secret. He said it was the only thing keeping me around. A joke. Harold would have laughed at that. I smiled at the memory, bittersweet. Oliver's pencil scratched rhythmically against the paper. He was drawing something intense, I couldn't see what from where I stood. I thought maybe today we could go to the park, or the library. Whatever you want, sweetheart. We have 2 whole weeks of... I stopped. My eyes had landed on the teapot sitting on the counter. Victoria had made tea for me last night. Your favorite blend, she had said, pressing the delicate cup into my hands. Something to help you sleep. You look so tired, Eleanor. I was tired. I was always tired these days. It was a bone-deep exhaustion that sleep never quite fixed. I had blamed age. I had blamed grief. I had blamed the relentless stress of sharing my home with a woman I could never quite trust. I hadn't drunk the tea last night. Something had stopped me, a gut instinct I couldn't articulate. I had set it aside and forgotten about it. But Victoria had left the pot out for me this morning with a little sticky note in her flawless handwriting, "Reheat and enjoy. You deserve it. You deserve it." I poured the amber liquid into my favorite cup, the one Marcus had given me for my 60th birthday. White porcelain with tiny blue forget-me-nots, his handwriting on the card, "For the best mom in the world." I brought the cup to my lips. The steam rose, smelling of chamomile and honey. Comforting, safe. And then Oliver moved. His hand shot across the table and grabbed my wrist. The cup tilted violently. Tea splashed onto the tablecloth, a hot, spreading stain. I stared at him, stunned. He never initiated contact like this. "Oliver, what? Don't drink that." The voice was unrecognizable. It wasn't the clear, bell-like voice of a child. It was rough, grating. It sounded like a rusty hinge that hadn't been turned in years. The syllables were clumsy, shaped by a tongue that had forgotten how to dance, pushing through a throat tight with disuse. But the words were intelligible. They were deliberate. The cup slipped from my fingers. It shattered on the floor, the sound like a gunshot in the quiet kitchen. Tea spread across the tiles, dark and ominous. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. "Oliver." "Grandma." He was looking at me now. Really looking at me. And his eyes... God, his eyes weren't vacant at all. They never had been, I realized with a jolt. They were sharp, terrified, alive, burning with 6 years of secrets. Mommy put something in the tea." He rasped, his voice cracking on the hard consonants. "I saw her, last night, when she thought I was sleeping." The kitchen was silent except for the thudding of my own heart. 6 years. 6 years of silence. 6 years of specialists and therapies and heartbreak. 6 years of believing my grandson was locked inside himself, unable to reach out. And now he was speaking to me. "I know you think I am broken." He said the words coming faster now, though still hoarse. "But I am not broken. I couldn't talk. Not with Mommy here. Not with anyone listening." My legs gave out. I sank into the chair across from him, my hands shaking so badly I had to grip the edge of the table to steady them. "Oliver." "Sweetheart, you can talk. You have always been able to talk." He nodded. A single tear slid down his cheek. He wiped it away quickly, aggressively, as if crying was dangerous. "I was scared. After what happened to Daddy, Mommy said bad things happen to little boys who talk too much. She said if I ever told anyone what I saw, she would make sure I could never talk again." What he saw? My stomach dropped. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Everything I thought I knew was falling away like sand through my fingers. "What did you see, Oliver?" He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. 8 years old. Just 8 years old, carrying a burden so heavy I could see it physically bending his small shoulders. 6 years of silence. 6 years of fear. 6 years of watching his mother live in this house, pretending to grieve a man she had murdered. "Christmas Eve," he whispered, his voice barely a breath. "I had a nightmare. I woke up and went to find Daddy." "But he was at the top of the stairs, with Mommy. And there was another man there, too." Another man. My breath caught in my throat. A third person. Someone else was there that night. They were yelling. Daddy was so angry. I had never heard him so angry. He kept saying, "How could you?" over and over, and Mommy was laughing, like it was funny. I thought of my son, my Marcus, the gentlest man I had ever known. He had never raised his voice at me, not once in 34 years. I could not imagine him yelling. But betrayal changes people. I know that now. And then Oliver's voice dropped so low I had to lean forward to hear him over the hum of the refrigerator. Mommy pushed him. She put her hands on his chest and she pushed. And Daddy fell, all the way down. I heard the sound when he couldn't finish. He was crying now silently, the way children cry when they have learned that making noise brings punishment instead of comfort. I pulled him onto my lap. He was too big for it, really, all long legs and bony elbows, but I didn't care. I held him the way I had held Marcus when he was small. The way I would hold him forever if I could. I tried to tell someone. Oliver sobbed into my shoulder, his voice muffled. The policeman asked me questions, but Mommy was holding my hand so tight it hurt. She smiled and said I had nightmares, that I was confused, that I didn't understand what I saw because I was just a baby. The investigation. I remembered. The police had questioned everyone. They had ruled it an accident. A terrible, tragic accident. Marcus had been drinking, they said. He had tripped at the top of the stairs. Case closed. I understood, Grandma. Oliver pulled back to look at me. His eyes were red but fierce. There was steel in that little boy. Steel that had been forged in the fire of silence. I was little, but I understood what I saw. Mommy pushed Daddy, and then she told me if I ever said anything, she would make sure no one would ever believe me. She would send me away to a place where bad boys go. Forever. So he stopped talking. A 2-year-old child made a calculated choice. He sealed his own voice inside himself to survive. And he had carried this secret for 6 years. Waiting. Waiting for what? For someone to believe him. For a moment when it was safe to speak. For his mother to leave. Why now? I asked. My voice was barely a whisper. Why are you telling me now? Oliver bit his lip. That gesture. It was so much like Marcus. Because I heard Mommy on the phone yesterday. She didn't know I was awake. She was talking to someone. About you. About the tea. She said... He swallowed hard, his throat working. She said it was almost done. She said after you were gone, no one would ever find out. No one would ever know what she did. The tea. I looked at the shattered cup on the floor, at the brown liquid seeping into the grout between the tiles, at the stains spreading like dried blood. Almost done. How long? How long had she been doing this? 32 years as an ICU nurse. I had seen poisoning before. Accidental overdoses, intentional harm, slow poisoning that masqueraded as chronic illness. I knew the signs. I knew the smell of something wrong in a patient's system. I stood up slowly, setting Oliver on his feet. I walked to the counter where the teapot still sat. I lifted the lid, brought it to my nose. There, underneath the chamomile and honey, something off, bitter, metallic, chemical, the kind of smell that made my medical training stand up and take notice. I didn't know what it was, not yet. But my body knew. My 32 years of instincts knew. Victoria had tried to poison me. No. Victoria was poisoning me. Had been poisoning me. For how long? The fatigue that never went away. The headaches. The dizzy spells I had blamed on grief and aging. She had been patient, methodical. The tea she made for me every night. How long had she been doing this? How long had she been slowly killing me while I thanked her for her kindness? I set the teapot down. My hands were steady now. The shock had passed. Something colder was settling in. Something I hadn't felt since the night the police called me about Marcus. Purpose. I found a clean jar in the cupboard. Carefully, without spilling a drop, I poured the remaining tea into it. Evidence. I sealed the lid tight. Then I wiped the jar clean and hid it in the very back of the refrigerator behind the jars of pickled vegetables Victoria never touched. "Grandma?" Oliver's voice was small, scared, like he wasn't sure if he had done the right thing. "Do you believe me?" I looked at my grandson, at the child everyone thought was broken, at the only witness to my son's murder. "Yes," I said. "I believe you." I believed him because I had always known, somewhere deep in my gut, in the part of me that had spent 3 decades watching people live and die, I had always known something was wrong. The night Marcus died. The phone call at 2 a.m. Victoria's voice hysterical but somehow rehearsed. He fell down the stairs. He was drinking, and he fell. But Marcus didn't drink. Not really. A beer at a barbecue, a glass of wine at Christmas dinner. He was not a drinking man. He had seen what alcohol did to my father, and he had promised himself he would never go down that road. The funeral. Victoria in her black dress crying into a handkerchief. Perfect tears. Perfect grief. But I had seen her check her phone during the eulogy. I had seen her smile at someone across the room. Just for a fleeting second. A flash of something that was not grief. And the bruises. I had seen Marcus's body at the funeral home. One last goodbye. The marks on his back, his shoulders. The funeral director said they were from the fall, but I knew what fall injuries looked like. I had seen hundreds of them. 32 years of trauma patients. 32 years of bodies that had fallen from ladders downstairs off roofs. The pattern was wrong. I had noticed. God help me, I had noticed all of it. And I had told myself I was being paranoid. That grief was making me suspicious. That no mother would. That no wife would. But Victoria wasn't a mother. Not really. She had never looked at Oliver the way a mother looks at her child. She looked at him the way someone looks at an obstacle. A problem to be managed. A witness to be silenced. And she wasn't a wife anymore either. She was a killer. The rest of that morning passed in a blur. I made Oliver breakfast. I cleaned up the broken cup and the spilled tea. I called in sick to my weekly coffee with the ladies from church. Margaret would understand. She always understood. And I thought. I planned. I let my ICU training take over. The calm in the chaos, the methodical thinking that had saved so many lives over the years. Victoria was smart. She had fooled everyone for 6 years. The police, the lawyers, her own parents, me. If I called the authorities now, what would happen Oliver's word against hers? A child who had not spoken in 6 years suddenly accusing his mother of murder. She would spin it. She was so good at spinning things. She would say I had coached him. She would say I was a bitter old woman attempting to steal her son. She would cry those perfect tears, and everyone would believe her. No, I needed proof, real, undeniable proof. And I had 2 weeks to find it. That afternoon, Oliver drew while I searched the house. I started with Victoria's bedroom, the room that used to be mine and Harold's before she convinced me to move to the smaller guest room. She had redecorated everything when she moved in. New curtains, new bedding, new furniture. Like she was erasing us from our own home. At the time, I had told myself it helped her with grief. Now I understood. She was claiming territory. I didn't know what I was looking for. Financial records, letters, anything that might explain why she had killed my son. Greed. There was the life insurance, but that couldn't be enough. There had to be more. I found nothing useful, just clothes and jewelry and the expensive skincare products she ordered online with money that should have been going to Oliver's future. But in the closet tucked behind a box of old shoes, I found something else. Marcus's laptop. My heart stopped. I had forgotten about it. After he died, Victoria had packed away all his things. "Too painful," she had said. "I cannot bear to look at them." I hadn't questioned it. I had been too deep in my own grief to question anything. I pulled the laptop out and carried it downstairs. It was password protected, of course. I tried every combination I could think of. Our birthdays, Oliver's birthday, our wedding anniversary, the name of his childhood dog. Nothing worked. But I would figure it out. I had time. That evening I sat with Oliver on the couch. He was drawing again, his pencil moving across the page with quick, certain strokes. The house was quiet, safe. For the first time in years, it felt like home. "Oliver," I said gently, "can I see what you have been drawing all these years?" He hesitated. I could see the fear flicker across his face. Old habits die hard. Then slowly he handed me his sketchbook. I turned the pages. The first few were normal. Trees, houses, the dog from next door. A birthday cake. A sunset. The kind of things any child might draw. But as I went further back, the drawings changed. A house with dark windows, a staircase, figures at the top. The same image repeated over and over in different variations, like he was trying to process something he couldn't put into words. I stopped at one page. My breath caught in my throat. It was a stick figure drawing. Simple like any child's art. But the meaning was horrifyingly clear. Two figures at the top of the stairs. One with long hair. Victoria. One with short hair. Marcus. And behind Victoria, hands extended toward Marcus's back. A third figure stood nearby. The other man Oliver had mentioned. The fourth figure was falling. Arms spread wide, tumbling down into darkness. At the bottom of the stairs, a tiny figure watched. A child. Eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Oliver. "I drew it so I wouldn't forget," he said quietly, his voice still raspy. "In case someday someone believed me." He had been documenting. For 6 years, a child had been silently recording the truth in the only way he could, hiding evidence in plain sight. I held the drawing in my trembling hands. Evidence. Not enough for a court, maybe, but a beginning. I looked at the kitchen counter, at the teapot still sitting there, at the jar of poisoned tea I had hidden in the back of the refrigerator. Victoria had made that tea specially for me. She had smiled when she handed it over. "You deserve it," she had said. It was the same smile she wore at Marcus's funeral. I thought about everything Oliver had told me. The murder, the threats, the phone call he overheard, the patience she had shown waiting 6 years to make her next move. Why now? Why after all this time was she finally coming for me? And then I realized something that made my blood run cold. My daughter-in-law had been planning this for a very long time. But what I didn't know yet was exactly how long. I did not sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of Marcus falling played behind my eyelids like a loop of old film I couldn't cut. I heard the sound Oliver had described, that terrible, sickening thud at the bottom of the stairs. My imagination, fueled by grief and horror, filled in the details my grandson had been too young to fully articulate. The shock on Marcus's face. The realization in that final split second that the woman he loved, the woman he had built a life with, had just pushed him to his death. My son, my only child, murdered by the woman he had trusted with his heart. I lay in bed watching the darkness slowly turn into the bruised gray of pre-dawn, then pink, then gold, as the sun rose over the Connecticut hills. It was the same sunrise I had watched 10,000 times from this window, the same view Harold and I had shared for 34 years of marriage. But everything was different now. The landscape hadn't changed, but the world had. Everything I thought I knew had been torn apart and rebuilt into something darker, something uglier. Around 5:30, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. A moment later, Oliver appeared in my doorway. His hair was messy from sleep, sticking up in tufts, but his eyes were wide awake, alert. He hadn't slept either. "Grandma?" His voice was a rasp, still rough from years of disuse. "Come here, sweetheart." He climbed into bed beside me, something he hadn't done since he was 4 years old, before the silence, before the fear took root. "Are you going to tell the police?" he whispered. I had been asking myself the same question all night, staring at the ceiling fan. The answer was complicated. "Not yet," I said, smoothing the hair back from his forehead. "We need evidence first. Real evidence. Something they cannot dismiss as the imagination of a grieving old woman and a traumatized child. Your mother is very good at making people believe her version of the truth." Oliver nodded. He understood. He had spent 6 years being dismissed, being told his memories were nightmares, being taught that his truth did not matter. "Then we find evidence," he said. Simple, determined. It was so much like his father that my chest ached. "Yes," I said. "We find evidence." The investigation began after breakfast. I had a plan. 32 years in the ICU had taught me how to work systematically, how to gather patient history, analyze patterns, and draw conclusions based on clinical evidence rather than emotion. I couldn't afford to be a grieving mother right now. I had to be a detective. First, establish motive. Why would Victoria kill Marcus? Was it just anger or something more second examine means? How had she gotten away with it for 6 years? Third, find opportunity. What exactly happened that Christmas Eve that allowed her to commit murder and escape justice? And underneath all of that lay the most pressing question. Why was she trying to kill me now? What had changed in the equation? Oliver stayed close as I began searching Victoria's bedroom. The master bedroom. My bedroom once upon a time before Victoria had convinced me to move to the smaller guest room downstairs. "You shouldn't have to climb stairs at your age," she had said sweetly. "And I need the space for Oliver's things." Oliver's things. As if she had ever cared about Oliver's things. The room looked different in the harsh light of day. I hadn't been in here for months. Victoria always kept the door closed, and I had learned to respect her privacy. But now I saw it with new eyes. The furniture was new, expensive. The kind of modern minimalist pieces, sharp angles, glass chrome, that belonged in an architectural digest, not a warm family home. The curtains were heavy silk. The bedding was high thread count designer linen. Everything Victoria touched turned to cold luxury. "She changed everything," Oliver said quietly, standing in the doorway, unwilling to cross the threshold. "Daddy's stuff used to be here. His books, his pictures." "I know, sweetheart." I searched the obvious places first. The nightstand drawers, the dresser, the walk-in closet with its rows of designer clothes and shoes that cost more than my first car. Nothing. Just the evidence of a woman who loved expensive things and had the money to afford them. But then Oliver pointed at the vanity. "That drawer," he croaked. "Mommy always keeps it locked." The vanity was a beautiful antique piece, one of the few things Victoria had kept from the original decor because it suited her image. It had a central drawer with ornate brass hardware, locked tight. I had raised a son who hid his Halloween candy in clever places. I knew how to find secrets in this house. The key wasn't on her keychain. It wasn't in the nightstand. I checked her jewelry box, lifting out the trays of diamond earrings and gold bracelets. Finally, hidden under the velvet lining of the bottom tier, I felt a small hard lump. I pulled it out. A small brass key. People always hide keys near the locks they protect. It is human nature. Convenience often overrides security. The drawer opened with a soft, satisfying click. Inside it wasn't jewelry or love letters. It was paperwork. Folders, documents, bank statements, credit card bills. The financial life Victoria had kept meticulously hidden from everyone. I gathered everything and carried it downstairs to the kitchen table, spreading it out like a patient's chart. Oliver sat nearby with his sketchbook drawing quietly, but I knew he was listening, processing. He had spent 6 years observing in silence. Old habits die hard. The life insurance policy was on top. $500,000 paid out to Victoria Thornton's sole beneficiary in January 2020. 1 month after Marcus died, $500,000. That was what my son's life had been worth to the insurance company. I flipped through the bank statements month by month, year by year. I watched the numbers drop like a stone. January 2020, $487,000 after taxes and fees. June 2020, $412,000. The statements showed purchases for designer furniture. A new luxury SUV. December 2020, $361,000. Holiday shopping. A trip to Aspen for grief recovery. I kept going, year after year, the money bleeding out like a wound that refused to clot. December 2021, $290,000. December 2022, $184,000. December 2023, $117,000. December 2024, $63,000. And now, the most recent statement dated November 2025, $47,000 remaining. Victoria had burned through almost $500,000 in 6 years. Designer bags, spa weekends, first-class flights to places Marcus had always wanted to visit, but never got to see. Paris, Milan, Tokyo. She had been living his dreams with his death money. But that wasn't the worst part. I found the credit card statements next, and there, hidden among the luxury purchases, were transfers, wire transfers, large sums sent to an account I didn't recognize. They started about 18 months ago, $5,000, then $10,000, then $20,000. Regular payments appearing every month like clockwork to an entity listed only as RM Holdings LLC, RM. The same initials Oliver had heard Victoria mention on the phone, the initials of the man who had been there that night. I set down the statements and stared at the numbers. The picture was becoming horrifyingly clear. Victoria was running out of money. The $500,000 that had seemed like a fortune 6 years ago was nearly gone. And she was desperate. The Thornton estate, my estate, was worth approximately $2.5 million. The house alone was valued at $1.8 million in this market. Then there were the investments Harold had made over the years. The life insurance I still held. The rental properties we had bought in the 80s, when nobody wanted land in this part of Connecticut. I controlled all of it. As the surviving Thornton, everything was in my name. If I died, Oliver would inherit. And as Oliver's sole living parent and legal guardian, Victoria would control his inheritance until he turned 18. 10 more years of access to millions of dollars. That was what my death was worth to her. The tea made perfect sense now, the slow poisoning. She needed it to look natural, an old woman declining, getting sicker, eventually passing away in her sleep. Nothing suspicious. Nothing that would raise questions or trigger an autopsy. Just a grieving grandmother who finally succumbed to her broken heart. I pushed back from the table, my hands shaking. Not from fear this time. From rage. "Grandma?" Oliver's voice was small. "Are you okay?" "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." I needed to make a phone call. Patricia Chen answered on the third ring. Her voice was warm, but surprised we hadn't spoken in almost 2 years, not since her promotion to chief medical examiner. "Eleanor Thornton," she said. "I was just thinking about you last week. How are you holding up?" Small talk. I didn't have time for small talk. "Patty, I need a favor. A professional favor." Silence on the line. Patricia was smart. She could hear the tension vibrating in my voice. "What kind of favor?" "I need you to look at a file. An old file, from December 2019. More silence. Heavy this time. Then, Marcus's file. "Yes." "Ellie." She exhaled slowly, the sound of a woman who knew she was stepping into dangerous territory. "What's going on? You sound different." How could I explain? How could I tell her that my 8-year-old grandson had broken 6 years of silence to warn me that my daughter-in-law was a murderer? That everything we believed about Marcus's death was a lie? "My grandson told me things," I said carefully. "Things that make me question what happened that night. I need to know the truth, Patty, even if it destroys me." "Eleanor, that case was ruled an accident. Dr. Howard did the autopsy himself. He was thorough. Dr. Howard is retired now, and I am not questioning his competence. I am asking you as a friend and as a professional to look at the file again, with fresh eyes. Look for defensive wounds. Look for impact angles that don't match a simple fall." Patricia was quiet for a long moment. I could almost hear her weighing the risks, looking into a closed case, questioning a colleague's work, the politics of her position. "Off the record," she finally said. "For now, I'll pull the file tonight and look at it at home. But Ellie, if what you're suggesting is true, we need to be very careful. If Victoria really did..." "I know. I'm already being careful. I'll call you tomorrow. And Ellie, don't do anything stupid." I almost laughed. Stupid would have been drinking the tea. After the call, I sat with Oliver and we ate lunch in silence. Not the heavy, oppressive silence of the past 6 years. This was different. companionable. We were partners now working toward the same goal. "Grandma," Oliver said between bites of his sandwich, his voice gaining a little more strength. "Daddy had a journal. A real one. With a lock and everything. He used to write in it before bed." My heart stuttered in my chest. "A journal. Mommy took it after Daddy died. She said she was keeping it safe. But I saw her reading it once. She was crying. But not sad crying. Angry crying. A journal. Marcus had kept a journal, and Victoria had taken it. Do you know where she put it?" Oliver shook his head. "She hid it. I looked, but I couldn't find it." The basement. It had to be in the basement. Victoria had packed away all of Marcus's belongings after his death. "Too painful," she had said. "I cannot bear to look at them." She had been so convincing, so grief-stricken. In reality, she was burying the evidence. The basement stairs creaked under my feet as we descended. Oliver held my hand, his grip tightening with each step. I could feel his fear, the memory of another staircase, another descent. Some traumas live in the body forever. "It's okay," I whispered. "We're just looking." But we both knew better. We were looking for ghosts. The storage area was cluttered with boxes and old furniture. Dust motes floated in the weak light from a single bulb. Victoria's handwriting labeled each box in her perfect script: Marcus, clothes, Marcus, books, Marcus, personal, personal. That was where I started. Oliver stayed close while I opened the first box. Marcus's favorite sweater, the one I had given him for Christmas years ago. His college sweatshirt, socks and ties, and the leather belt Harold had passed down to him. I pressed the sweater to my face. After 6 years, it barely smelled like him anymore. Just dust and cardboard and the ghost of the man he used to be. The second box held memories. Photo albums from his childhood, his high school diploma, the trophy he had won at his first debate tournament, a stack of birthday cards I had given him over the years. He had saved every single one. "He loved you so much," Oliver said quietly. "He used to talk about you all the time, how smart you were, how strong." I wiped my eyes. This was not the time for tears. The third box was smaller, heavier. I lifted the lid and found a jumble of items: his watch, his college ring, a few books. And at the bottom, wrapped in an old t-shirt, a black leather journal. It had a small brass lock, but the latch had been pried open. The metal was twisted. Victoria had read it. She had read her husband's private thoughts, confirmed her suspicions, and then hidden the evidence in the basement where no one would find it. I carried the journal upstairs. Oliver followed, watching me with those two old eyes. The living room was growing dark as evening settled in. I turned on a lamp and sat in Harold's old armchair, the one Victoria had wanted to throw away. But I had insisted on keeping. Oliver curled up on the couch with a blanket, exhausted from the day's emotions. I opened the journal to the first page. Marcus's handwriting. Neat and controlled. The penmanship of a man who had always prided himself on precision, on logic, on control. January 15th, 2019. New year, new journal. Victoria gave me this for Christmas. She said I needed to process my feelings more. Maybe she is right. I have been stressed at work lately. The promotion is taking everything out of me. I turned the pages slowly, watching my son's life unfold in his own words. March 3rd, 2019. V seems distant lately, always on her phone. When I ask who she is talking to, she says, "Just friends from work." But she never used to hide her phone before. My stomach tightened. The first hint of trouble. July 22nd, 2019. Found receipts in V's purse. Hotels in Hartford. She said they were work trips, but I checked her calendar. No work trips scheduled. Am I being paranoid? God, I hope I am being paranoid. He wasn't being paranoid. I knew that now. September 8th, 2019. I think V is having an affair. I don't want to believe it. We have Oliver. We have a life. But she comes home late 3 nights a week now. And she smells different. Like cologne. Men's cologne. The entries grew more frequent, more desperate. November 14th, 2019. Hired a private investigator. I feel sick about it. But I need to know. I need to know if my wife, if the mother of my child, I can't even write it. November 28, 2019. PI delivered his report. I couldn't open it for 3 days. Today, I finally did. The next entry was written in a different pen. The ink was darker, the handwriting shakier, like he had started over multiple times. November 28, 2019 continued. It's true, all of it. The PI has photos. Victoria meeting a man at a hotel in Hartford, the same hotel those receipts were from. They have been seeing each other for over a year. His name is Ryan Mitchell. He works in finance. Victoria met him at some charity gala I couldn't attend because I was watching Oliver. Ryan Mitchell. RM. The man who had been at the top of the stairs on Christmas Eve. The man to whom Victoria was now sending thousands of dollars a month. December 15th, 2019. Confronted Vi tonight. Showed her the photos. She didn't even try to deny it. She laughed. She laughed and said I was pathetic for having her followed. Said she only married me for... The sentence stopped mid-word. The next few pages had been torn out, ripped roughly from the binding, leaving ragged edges. Victoria had removed whatever came next. Whatever hateful, revealing things she had said, she had destroyed them to protect her secrets. I kept turning pages. Most were blank now. And then I found it. The final entry. December 23rd, 2019. 1 day before he died. The handwriting was different again. Steadier than the November entries. Calmer. Like he had made peace with something terrible. I am writing this in case something happens to me. I went to see a lawyer yesterday, drew up a new will. Victoria does not know about it yet, but she will soon. I am changing everything. The house, the investments, Mom's trust. All of it goes directly to Oliver now. Victoria will not see a penny if I die. My lawyer says the documents will be filed after the holidays. I told V about the divorce papers this morning. She was calm. Too calm. The Victoria I know would have screamed, thrown things, made threats, but she just smiled and said, "We'll talk about it tomorrow." I don't know why, but that scares me more than anger would have. Mom, if you're reading this, I am so sorry. I should have told you what was happening. I was ashamed. I thought I could handle it myself. I thought I could protect Oliver and fix my marriage and make everything okay. I was wrong. V is not who we thought she was. She is... God, I don't even know how to describe it. Cold. Calculating. She has been using me for years, using all of us. And now that she knows about the new will, now that she knows I'm taking everything away from her, I am probably being paranoid. Nothing is going to happen. We will have our fight tomorrow. She will sign the divorce papers eventually, and life will go on. But if you are reading this, if something has happened to me, it was not an accident. Protect Oliver. He has seen things. He knows things. And V will do anything to keep him quiet. Anything. I love you, Mom. I am sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Your son, Marcus. I read the words 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. My hands were shaking so badly the pages rattled. My vision blurred with tears I had been holding back for hours. My son had known. 24 hours before Victoria pushed him down those stairs, Marcus had known she was dangerous. He had tried to protect Oliver. Tried to protect me. He had written this letter as insurance, as evidence, as a desperate plea from beyond whatever grave he feared was waiting, and I had never seen it. 6 years. I had spent 6 years sharing a house with my son's murderer, making her tea, watching her raise my grandson, believing her tears and her grief and her perfect performance of a devastated widow. The journal slipped from my fingers and landed on the carpet with a soft thump. Oliver stirred on the couch. "Grandma." I could not answer, could not speak, could not do anything but stare at the wall where Marcus's senior portrait hung, the one Victoria had wanted to take down, but I had refused. My son smiled at me from that photograph. 22 years old, his whole life ahead of him. No idea that one day he would fall in love with a woman who would destroy him. December 23rd. He had written this warning 1 day before Christmas Eve. 1 day before Victoria pushed him down those stairs. One day before she stole everything from us. And I had spent 6 years believing it was an accident. 6 years of lies. 6 years of manipulation. 6 years of my grandson suffering in silence because a monster had taught him that speaking the truth meant death. But now I knew. Now I had proof. And Victoria. Victoria had no idea that her carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. I did not sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the words from Marcus's journal burning against my eyelids. It was not an accident. I sat in Harold's old armchair, the leather cool against my back, watching the darkness slowly bleed into gray, then pink, then a pale, sickly gold as the sun rose over the Connecticut hills. It was the same sunrise I had watched 10,000 times from this window. But the world it illuminated was no longer the one I recognized. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't cried. I was beyond crying now. I was somewhere past grief in a cold, barren landscape where only one thing could grow determination. "Grandma?" Oliver stood in the doorway, still in his pajamas. His hair was mussed from sleep sticking up in tufts, but his eyes were wide awake, alert. He hadn't slept either. He had been listening, watching. "You didn't sleep," he said. It wasn't a question. His voice was rough, a rasp of gravel, but steady. "No." He disappeared for a moment. I heard the soft padding of his feet in the kitchen, the sound of water running, the click of the electric kettle. A cupboard opened and closed. Then he returned carrying a steaming mug with both hands, moving carefully to avoid spilling a drop. I flinched when he offered it to me. He noticed. Of course he noticed. He noticed everything. "I made it myself," he said quickly, his eyes earnest. "From the new box, the sealed one in the back of the pantry, the one Mommy didn't touch. I checked the seal." My throat tightened. 8 years old, and he was already thinking like a survivalist. Already checking seals and anticipating threats, protecting me the way I should have been protecting him. I took the cup with trembling hands. It was too hot, but I didn't care. The warmth felt like an anchor, something real in a world that had become a nightmare. "Thank you, sweetheart." He sat on the floor beside my chair, leaning his head against my legs the way he used to when he was a toddler. Before the silence, before Victoria taught him that love was a liability. "What are we going to do?" he asked. I looked down at Marcus's journal still resting on my lap. At my son's handwriting. At the truth that had been buried in a basement box for 6 years while a murderer slept under my roof. "We're going to find proof," I said. "Real proof. Enough to make sure Victoria never hurts anyone again." Oliver nodded slowly against my knee. "Okay." Such a small word. Okay. But coming from him, it sounded like a battle cry. The phone rang at 9:32. I had been watching the clock on the mantel, counting the minutes since sunrise, waiting for Patricia's call. I snatched the receiver up on the first ring. "Ellie?" Her voice was different, careful, guarded in a way that made my stomach clench. "Are you sitting down?" "I've been sitting down all night. What did you find?" Silence on the line. I could hear her breathing, measuring her words, calculating the professional risk she was taking. "I reviewed the autopsy file last night. The photos, the measurements, Dr. Howard's original notes. He was thorough, but he operated under a specific assumption." "That it was an accident?" I said. "Exactly. And when you look for an accident, that's what you find. But looking at it with fresh eyes, there are inconsistencies." "What kind of inconsistencies?" "The bruising on his forearms," Patricia said slowly. "Dr. Howard noted them as impact trauma from the fall. But looking at the pattern, Ellie, they look like defensive wounds. Like he raised his arms to protect himself, to block someone. My son raising his arms, trying to block Victoria's push, trying to save himself in that last terrible second." "Someone pushing him," I said. My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from underwater. "I can't say that officially. Not yet. But yes, the biomechanics suggest a struggle before the fall." "What else?" Patricia exhaled a sharp sound of frustration. "The angle of the head injury. When someone trips and falls downstairs, they typically tumble forward. The primary impact is usually to the face or the top of the skull. But Marcus, the fatal blow was to the occipital bone, the back of his head. Meaning he fell backward. He was facing the top of the stairs when he went down. Facing up. Looking at his killer as he fell. He was pushed, I said, from the front. The physics support that conclusion. Yes. The room seemed to tilt. I had known. I had known since Oliver first spoke, but hearing it confirmed by a medical professional, hearing the cold clinical evidence of my son's murder, shattered the last remnants of my denial. Why didn't Howard catch this? I don't know. Maybe he was tired. It was Christmas Eve. Maybe he took the grieving widow's story at face value. Victoria is persuasive. She hesitated. Or maybe he just didn't want to see a murder in a happy home. Victoria, of course Victoria. She had charmed everyone, the police, the medical examiner, even me. What can we do? I asked. Officially. Right now, nothing. I can't reopen a closed homicide case based on a reinterpretation of 6-year-old photos. We need new evidence. Something concrete. Something that places her at the scene with intent. I have her motive, I said. Financial records. The life insurance is almost gone. And the journal? Marcus kept a journal. He wrote about the affair, about her threats, about his plan to divorce her. Patricia was quiet for a moment. That's good, Ellie. That's really good. That establishes state of mind. But we need more. We need something that puts her hands on his chest. I'm working on it. Be careful. If what you're telling me is true, if Victoria really did this, she's gotten away with murder for 6 years. She's intelligent. She's a sociopath. And if she finds out you're investigating, I know. So. Do you? Because the woman who could push her husband down a flight of stairs in front of her own child, that woman has no boundaries, no moral floor. She will do whatever it takes to protect herself. I looked at Oliver still sitting on the floor beside me, still listening to every word. So will I said. After the call, Oliver and I spread his drawings across the living room floor. 6 years of silence. 6 years of nightmares captured in graphite and crayon. 6 years of a child desperately trying to communicate something the adults in his life refused to see. But I was seeing now. Show me, I said. Show me everything. He organized them chronologically. 2020, right after Marcus died. The drawings were jagged, almost primitive, a 2-year-old's processing of trauma. Dark scribbles, red crayon that might have been blood, a shape at the bottom of a black void. Then 2021. The images grew clearer. A house, a staircase, figures at the top. By 2022, the details had sharpened. A woman with long dark hair, a man with short hair, and falling, always falling, a figure tumbling down into darkness. You drew the same thing over and over, I said softly. I didn't want to forget. His voice was small. I was scared if I forgot nobody would ever know. And Daddy would just be gone. Like he never mattered. I pulled him close, burying my face in his hair. He mattered. He matters. And we're not going to let anyone forget. We kept looking. 2023. 2024. The drawings became more sophisticated as Oliver grew older, more detailed. Shadows, perspective, expressions. And then I found it. A drawing from early 2024. The same scene, the staircase, Victoria Marcus. But this time the perspective was wider. There was someone else. A third figure standing at the top of the stairs slightly behind Victoria. Tall, dark hair, holding something rectangular in his raised hand. This man, I said, pointing to the figure. Who is this? Oliver leaned over to look. The other man. He was there that night. You saw him clearly. He was standing behind Mommy. When Daddy fell, he held up his phone. Oliver mimed the gesture, holding an invisible rectangle in front of his face. Like he was taking a picture, or recording. My blood went cold. Recording. Ryan Mitchell had been recording. Why would someone record a murder unless it was planned? Unless he was documenting it as insurance, as leverage, as proof of Victoria's guilt that he could hold over her head forever. The payments to RM Holdings LLC suddenly made terrifying sense. Not gifts from Victoria to her lover, blackmail payments. Ryan Mitchell had evidence of the murder, and he had been using it to bleed Victoria dry for years. "Oliver, this is very important. Did the other man help Mommy push Daddy? Or did he just watch?" Oliver closed his eyes, concentrating, his face scrunching up with the effort of retrieving the memory. "He just watched. He didn't touch Daddy. But he smiled. When Daddy fell, he smiled. God in heaven, what kind of man smiles while watching a murder? The kind who knows it benefits him. The kind who has been waiting for exactly this moment. "We need the cameras," I said suddenly. The attic had not been touched in years. Harold used to go up there regularly, checking on his various projects, the model trains he never finished, the boxes of tax documents he refused to throw away, and the security system hub. "But the cameras were off," Oliver said. "Mommy said so." "Victoria said they were off," I corrected. "She made us turn off the main system to save electricity." "But your grandfather—" I paused, remembering. Harold was paranoid about security. He didn't trust the main breaker. He installed a backup recorder, an independent loop for the internal cameras. It was a long shot, a desperate one. But Harold had been stubborn. Maybe, just maybe, his stubbornness would save us now. "Help me with this," I said to Oliver as I pulled down the attic ladder. The attic was dark and stifling, smelling of old insulation and dry rot. Dust motes danced in the beam of the flashlight Oliver held. Seeing Harold's things, his tools, his books, the golf clubs he had never learned to use properly, hurt in a way I hadn't expected. Another loss layered on top of losses. We searched. Boxes of Christmas decorations, old furniture covered in sheets that looked like ghosts. Marcus's childhood toys. And there in the corner, tucked behind a stack of National Geographics, the backup DVR unit. It was a dusty black box with a red light that had long since burned out. Harold had wired it directly to the hallway camera. "Is that it?" Oliver asked. "I think so." I carried it downstairs and set it on the kitchen table. It was heavy, archaic tech from a decade ago. The casing was cracked. Some of the cables were frayed. When I plugged it in, nothing happened. No lights. No hum of the hard drive spinning up. "It's broken," Oliver said, his shoulders slumping. "The power supply is dead," I said, examining the unit. "But the hard drive is inside. Data doesn't just disappear because the machine won't turn on." I looked at Oliver. "We need a specialist, someone who can extract the data directly from the drive. Do you know someone?" I thought of the tech repair shop in town, the one that had fixed my laptop last year when I spilled coffee on it. The sign in the window said data recovery, no job too small. "I know someone who might be able to help." I called the shop immediately. The technician, a young man named Derek with sleeves of tattoos and a gentle voice, said he could look at it. "It's tricky with those old units," he warned. "But if the platters aren't shattered, I can usually pull something." "How long?" 3 to 4 days, maybe faster if I work through the night. It was a long shot, but long shots were all I had. I wrapped the DVR in a towel and placed it in my bag. That afternoon, while Oliver rested, I sat alone in the master bedroom. My bedroom. The room Harold and I had shared for 30 years. The room I had given up because Victoria needed the space. I sat on the edge of the bed, her bed now, and let the guilt wash over me. It was a physical weight, heavy and suffocating. Every instinct I had ignored. Every red flag I had dismissed. Every time I had thought something is wrong and told myself I was being paranoid, the bruises on Marcus's body. I had noticed Victoria's too calm demeanor at the funeral. I had noticed the way she looked at Oliver, not with love, but with calculation. I had noticed, and I had done nothing. I had swallowed my doubts, accepted the official story, and made peace with a murderer. 6 years. She had lived in my house for 6 years, eaten at my table, kissed my cheek on holidays, and I had smiled and pretended everything was fine because the alternative was too terrible to consider. My son had tried to warn me. He had written it down in black and white. If something happens to me, it was not an accident. And I had not found his warning until it was 6 years too late. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear this room apart. I wanted to go back in time and shake myself awake and force myself to see what was right in front of my face. But I couldn't change the past. I couldn't bring Marcus back. The only thing I could do, the only thing that mattered now, was protect Oliver. Find the truth. Make sure Victoria paid for what she had done. I stood up slowly. The guilt was still there, but I pushed it down. Guilt was a luxury I could not afford. Not with 11 days left. Not with my grandson's life at stake. I had failed Marcus once. I would not fail him again. That evening I made a list. What I had: poisoned tea needed lab analysis. Marcus's journal needed authentication. Oliver's drawings circumstantial but powerful. Security DVR at the shop pending recovery. Patricia's findings unofficial medical opinion. Financial records showing motive. The payments to RM Holdings. What I needed. Proof. Victoria was at the top of the stairs. The video. Proof of premeditation. The identity of the other man, confirmed Ryan Mitchell. The new will Marcus had mentioned. The will. Marcus had written in his journal, "I went to see a lawyer yesterday. Drew up a new will. The documents will be filed after the holidays." He had died before the holidays were over, before the will could be filed. But the lawyer? The lawyer would still have the draft. Or notes, or something. I searched online for the law firm where Marcus had worked and for the personal attorneys he used. I found a name in his old contacts, Arthur Henderson, Estate Law. I called the number. "Henderson, Price and Associates," a receptionist answered. "I'm trying to locate some documents," I explained, keeping my voice steady. "My son Marcus Thornton was a client. He passed away 6 years ago, but I believe he left something with Mr. Henderson shortly before he died." "One moment, please." Hold music, generic classical. I waited, heart pounding. "Mrs. Thornton." A different voice, male, older, grave. "This is Arthur Henderson. I was Marcus's attorney." "Mr. Henderson, thank you for taking my call. I was very sorry about Marcus. He was a good man." "Thank you. I'm calling because I recently discovered some of Marcus's personal writings. He mentioned visiting you on December 20th, 2019. He mentioned a new will." There was a long pause on the other end. "Mrs. Thornton," Henderson said slowly, "Marcus did come to see me. He was agitated. He brought a sealed file. He gave me strict instructions. Do not open this. Do not file anything yet. Just keep it safe until I call you after Christmas." My breath caught. And he never called," Henderson said softly. "When I heard he had passed, I assumed the file was moot. Since he never executed the documents or authorized me to open them, my hands were tied. I couldn't legally act on a sealed file without his instruction." "But you still have it." "I do. It's in our secure archives, marked, 'To be opened only by Eleanor Thornton in the event of my death.' He had left it for me, not as a public document, but as a failsafe. A message in a bottle." "Why didn't you contact me?" I asked. "I tried Mrs. Thornton. I called the house a week after the funeral," Victoria answered. "She told me you were too grief-stricken to handle any business, and that she was handling all of Marcus's affairs. She said she would pass the message along." Of course she did. She had blocked him, just like she blocked everything else. "I need to see that file," I said. "Come to my office tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Bring identification." "I'll be there." I hung up and stared at the phone. Marcus had known. He had known Victoria might try to prevent anyone from seeing the truth, so he had hidden it where only I could retrieve it. My brilliant, careful son. Even in death, he was trying to protect us. I tucked Oliver into bed that night. It was the first time I had done that in years. Victoria had always insisted on handling bedtime herself. "Quality time with my son," she called it. I wondered now what she had really been doing. What threats she had whispered in the dark. What fears she had reinforced to keep him silent. "Grandma," Oliver's voice was raspy in the darkness. "What happens now?" I sat on the edge of his bed. The same bed Marcus had slept in as a boy. "Now we gather evidence," I said. "We build a case, and when we have enough, we go to the police." "Yes, when we have enough that they cannot ignore us." He was quiet for a moment. What if Mommy comes back before we're done? I smoothed the hair from his forehead, the same gesture I had used with Marcus a lifetime ago. Then we make sure we find everything first. But what if we can't? His voice cracked. What if she comes back and she knows what we're doing and she... Oliver. I leaned down so I was looking directly into his eyes. I spent 32 years keeping people alive in the ICU. I learned something important there. What? That when someone you love is in danger, you don't give up, you don't stop, you fight until your last breath. He nodded slowly, tears glistening in his eyes. Like Daddy tried to fight. Yes. My throat tightened. Like Daddy tried to fight, but we have something Daddy didn't have. What? Each other and the truth. And 11 days. I kissed his forehead and stood in the doorway watching him until his breathing slowed into sleep. 11 days until Victoria returned from Paris. 11 days to prove she was a murderer. 11 days to make sure my grandson was safe forever. I walked down the hallway past the photographs of Marcus and Harold, past the life I used to have, past the woman I used to be, the one who trusted, who hoped, who believed the best in people. That woman was gone now, buried alongside her son. In her place stood someone new, someone harder, someone who understood that the world was full of monsters and the only way to defeat them was to become something they did not expect. I knew exactly what I was going to do, and God help anyone who tried to stop me. The law offices of Henderson, Price & Associates occupied the top floor of a weathered red brick building downtown. It was the kind of structure that had anchored the town square since before the highway was built, solid, imposing, and smelling of dust and serious decisions. I had left Oliver with Mrs. Patterson next door. She was 73 years old, mostly deaf, and possessed a heart made of gold. She had been bringing us casseroles since the day Marcus died. She didn't ask questions. She just patted Oliver's head, gave him a glass of milk, and said she would teach him how to cheat at gin rummy. Safe. He would be safe for a few hours. The elevator creaked and shuddered as it climbed. My reflection stared back at me from the polished brass doors, a 63-year-old woman in her Sunday dress clutching her purse like a weapon. I barely recognized myself. The grief was still there, etched into the lines around my mouth, but the fear in my eyes had been replaced by something colder. Arthur Henderson met me in the reception area. He was older than I expected, mid-70s, with thinning white hair and the kind of face that had seen too much of human nature but chosen to be kind anyway. Mrs. Thornton. He took my hand in both of his. His grip was dry and papery. Thank you for coming. I've been thinking about Marcus a lot lately. So have I. His office smelled like leather, old paper, and lemon polish. Mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with heavy legal volumes, a window overlooking the town square. On the wall hung diplomas and certificates, 40 years of practice, 40 years of keeping other people's secrets. Please sit. He gestured to a wingback chair. Can I get you anything, coffee, water? Just the file, Mr. Henderson, please. He nodded slowly, the professional mask slipping just enough to show his regret. He walked to a large safe built into the wall behind his desk. The combination was long 12 digits at least. When the heavy door swung open, I saw rows of sealed envelopes and folders. Other people's lives filed away alphabetically. He retrieved a thick manila envelope from the T section. Thornton, my son's name written in black marker. Marcus came to see me on December 20th. Henderson said, his voice heavy as he returned to his desk. 4 days before he died. He was troubled. Troubled how... Henderson set the envelope on the desk between us. He didn't let go of it immediately. His hand rested on the paper as if he could still feel Marcus's energy vibrating through it. I've been practicing law for a long time, Mrs. Thornton. I know what anxiety looks like. I know what anger looks like. But Marcus was terrified. He kept checking the window. He asked me if my office was soundproof. Henderson paused. I told him, son, whatever it is, we can fix it. He just shook his head and said, not this. This we can't fix. We can only survive it. My throat tightened. Did he say why? He said he was leaving this file with me as a precaution. He gave me strict instructions. Do not open this. Do not file anything yet. Just keep it safe until I call you after Christmas. Henderson looked me in the eye. He was planning to execute the documents on December 27th. He wanted to get through the holiday first. For Oliver. For Oliver. Always for Oliver. Even when he was staring into the abyss, my son put his child first. And when he didn't call, I whispered. I called the house, Henderson said. A week after the funeral. Victoria answered. I told her I needed to speak with you about a file Marcus had left. She told me you were indisposed, sedated with grief. She said she was the executor of the estate and that she would handle everything. She blocked you. She did. And since the documents in this envelope were technically just drafts, unsigned, unnotarized, they had no legal standing. Without Marcus here to sign them, the old will remained in effect. He slid the envelope toward me. I couldn't do anything, Mrs. Thornton. My hands were tied by the law. I locked it away and I waited. You waited for me. Marcus said if anything happened to him, you were the only one allowed to open it. My hands were steady as I broke the wax seal. Whatever was inside, I was ready. The first document was a draft of a last will and testament. Last will and testament of Marcus Andrew Thornton, dated December 20th, 2019. I had seen Marcus's original will, the one he created when Oliver was born. Everything went to Victoria as his spouse, standard, expected. The kind of will a loving husband creates for his family. This was different. I, Marcus Andrew Thornton, being of sound mind, do hereby intent to revoke all previous wills and codicils. I read through the legal language, Henderson watching me silently. To my wife, Victoria Rose Thornton, I leave nothing. The marriage has been irreparably broken through her own actions, and I no longer consider her my spouse in any meaningful sense. Nothing. Marcus had planned to cut her out completely. To my son, Oliver, Marcus Thornton, I leave my entire estate to be held in trust by my mother, Eleanor Grace Thornton, until Oliver reaches the age of 25 years. Oliver got everything. The house, the investments, the future. This is why, I said, my voice trembling. She found out. She knew he was going to sign this. That would explain the timing, Henderson said grimly. If he had signed this on the 27th, she would have been left with nothing. By killing him on the 24th, the old will stood. She got it all. The life insurance, I said. Victoria received $500,000. Life insurance operates outside the will, but he had a change of beneficiary form in here too. Henderson pointed to a paper clipped to the back. He was going to change it to Oliver. He never got the chance to file it. I turned to the second document. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Draft, unfiled. Grounds irreconcilable differences, adultery, and emotional cruelty. There was a yellow sticky note attached to the front in Marcus's handwriting. File Deck 26. Serve Victoria. Deck 27. Wait until Santa has come and gone. He was trying to protect his son from a ruined Christmas. He paid for that kindness with his life. There's one more thing, Henderson said quietly. The reason he was seeking a divorce. The third document was thicker than the others. A bound report with a black cover. Confidential investigation. Victoria Thornton. November 2019. Marcus had hired a private investigator. I opened the report and began to read. Subject: Victoria Rose. Thornton client, Marcus A. Thornton. Period of investigation: October 1st, November 15th, 2019. The PI had been thorough. Hotel records, credit card statements, phone logs, and photographs. Dozens of grainy but unmistakable photographs. Victoria meeting a man at a coffee shop in Hartford. Victoria walking with a man through a parking garage, her hand tucked into his pocket. Victoria kissing a man in the front seat of a black BMW. The same man in every photo. Tall, dark hair, sharp predatory features. The kind of handsome that came with money and confidence and a complete absence of conscience. Subject: identified Ryan Mitchell. Occupation financial advisor, Hartford Investment Group. Status single. High net worth. I stared at his face. The confident smile, the arrogance. Did you know about this? I asked Henderson. About the affair. Marcus told me. He was devastated. He had suspected for months, but seeing the proof. Henderson shook his head. It broke something in him. Not his resolve that only got stronger, but his faith. in marriage, in the woman he slept next to. I gathered the documents and stood. The weight of the envelope in my hands felt like lead. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson, for keeping this safe. For waiting." "Mrs. Thornton." He rose with me. "Whatever you're planning to do with this information, please be careful. If Victoria killed him to stop these documents from being signed, she did. Then she is dangerous, and she has the money and the freedom to stay that way." I met his eyes. Not for long. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, the engine idling, the heat blasting against the December chill. I pulled out the PI report again. I needed to memorize the face of the enemy. Ryan Mitchell. I flipped to the back of the report. There was a final photo time-stamped October 15, 2019. Victoria and Ryan at a hotel bar. They weren't kissing. They were leaning close heads together, looking at a phone, plotting. 2 months before Marcus died. They had been planning it even then. But something about Ryan's face nagged at me, a familiarity I couldn't place. I had seen him before, not just in these photos, in real life. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. I scrolled back, years back. After Marcus's funeral, Victoria had insisted on hiring a photographer. "To remember everyone who came to support us," she had said, "for Oliver to look back on." I had thought it was grotesque, a performance of grief. But I had been too weak to argue. Now I scrolled through those photos with new eyes. The service, the flowers, the mahogany casket that held my heart. Victoria in her black dress dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. And there, in the background of a group shot by the graveside, Ryan Mitchell. My breath hitched. He was standing behind Victoria. Close. Too close for a stranger. His hand rested on her shoulder, a gesture that looked like comfort to an outsider, but now looked like possession. I zoomed in on his face. He wasn't looking at the grave. He was looking at the camera. And he was smirking, just slightly, a micro-expression of triumph. And Victoria. I studied her face in the high-resolution photo. She wasn't crying. Her eyes were dry. And at the corner of her mouth, hidden behind the handkerchief she held, was that a smile? At her husband's funeral, with her lover, her accomplice, standing right behind her. The rage that burned through me was unlike anything I had ever felt. It wasn't hot. It was ice cold. It clarified everything. He had been there. Ryan Mitchell had stood at my son's grave. He had watched us mourn. He had probably helped her pick out the dress. And I had been there too, lost in my own sorrow, too blind to see the wolves standing among the sheep. Never again. Oliver was waiting for me when I got home. Mrs. Patterson reported that he had beaten her at gin rummy 3 times and asked for seconds on her lemon cake. "She's nice," Oliver rasped after I thanked Mrs. Patterson and closed the door. "She doesn't ask questions." "No, she doesn't." I knelt down so I was at his eye level. I pulled out the photograph of Ryan Mitchell from the PI report. "Oliver, I need you to look at this very carefully. Is this the man you saw the night Daddy died?" Oliver took the photo. His small hands trembled slightly, but his gaze was steady. He studied the face, the sharp jaw, the dark hair. "That's him." His voice was quiet, rough with the memory. He was wearing a different suit, a dark one. But that's the man who was with Mommy at the top of the stairs. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. I'll never forget his face." Oliver looked up at me. He smiled when Daddy fell. Not a normal smile. A mean smile, like he was winning a game. I took the photo back gently. "Thank you, Oliver. You are very brave." "I'm not brave," he whispered. "I was scared for 6 years." I pulled him into a hug, pressing his face against my shoulder. Being scared and doing the right thing anyway, that is the exact definition of brave. The afternoon was spent hunting Ryan Mitchell. I had never been particularly skilled with computers, but desperation is an excellent teacher. I sat at the kitchen table with my old laptop, not Marcus's, which was still password locked under my mattress, and searched. I found his LinkedIn profile easily enough. Ryan Mitchell, Senior Financial Advisor at Hartford Investment Group. specializing in high net worth client management and asset protection. Asset protection. The irony was bitter. His profile photo matched the PI surveillance pictures. Same confident smile. Same expensive suit. Same look of a man who believed the world owed him everything. There was no personal information. No social media presence beyond the professional. No Facebook. No Instagram. It was as if Ryan Mitchell existed only in the world of money and business. Deliberately low profile. The mark of someone with things to hide. I pulled out Victoria's financial documents, the ones I had found in her locked drawer in part 2. The bank statements, the credit card bills, and there buried among the luxury purchases, phone bills. I hadn't looked closely at them before. Now I traced through the records month by month, calls to the same number, ending in 4599, over and over, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day, sometimes late at night, sometimes lasting hours. I picked up my own phone and dialed the number. It rang 4 times, then voicemail. "You've reached Ryan. Leave a message." His voice, smooth, confident, the voice of the man who had stood at the top of my stairs. I hung up without speaking. My hands were shaking. Ryan Mitchell, the other man, the witness, the accomplice. And now I knew exactly who he was. And I knew something else, too. He was greedy. The payments to RM Holdings proved that. He wasn't doing this for love. He was doing it for money. And people who do things for money can be bought or threatened. The phone rang at 7 o'clock. I was in the kitchen making dinner or pretending to. Oliver was at the table drawing again, always drawing. I looked at the caller ID, Victoria. My stomach clenched a physical reaction to the name. I took a deep breath, forced my voice into its usual pleasant cadence, and answered. "Hello? Eleanor." Victoria's voice was warm, breezy. "I just wanted to check in, see how my baby is doing." "He's fine. We're fine. Just having a quiet evening." "That's wonderful. I've been so worried, being so far away. You know how I am." I did know. I knew exactly how she was. I knew she was a murderer. "Is Paris beautiful?" I asked, playing my part in the play she had written. "Oh, gorgeous. The lights, the food, the shopping. You really should travel more, Eleanor. Get out of that dusty old house." That dusty old house was mine, had been mine for 40 years. But I smiled into the phone like she could see me. "Maybe someday." Victoria's tone shifted slightly, testing, probing. The warmth dropped a few degrees. "Has anyone come by the house while I've been gone?" "Any visitors?" I thought of the law firm, the sealed envelope, Ryan Mitchell's face staring up at me from the kitchen table. "No visitors. It's been very quiet. Just Mrs. Patterson dropping off a casserole." "And the basement. Have you been going through any of Marcus's things?" She knew. Some part of her knew, or suspected. The question was too specific to be casual. "I haven't been in the basement in months, Victoria. My knees aren't what they used to be." Silence on the line. I could almost hear her calculating, weighing my tone against her suspicions. "Oliver hasn't been difficult, has he? Sometimes he has episodes. I worry about him." Episodes. That was what she called it when her son tried to communicate the trauma she had inflicted on him. "He's been perfectly fine. No episodes at all." Another pause, longer this time. "Well, that's good. That's very good." Her voice dropped, becoming something almost intimate. "Make sure you're taking care of yourself, Eleanor. I left some of my special tea blend for you. Have you been enjoying it?" I looked at the refrigerator where the poisoned sample sat hidden behind the pickled beets. "Every night. It helps me sleep." "Good. That's so good to hear." A smile in her voice now. The smile of a cat playing with a mouse that doesn't know it's already caught. "Take care of yourself, Eleanor. I'd hate for anything to happen to you while I'm gone." "I'll be careful." "Please do. And give my love to Oliver. Tell him Mommy misses him very much." The line went dead. I set down the phone. My palm was sweaty against the plastic case. Oliver was watching me, his crayon frozen above the paper. "Mommy called," he rasped. Not a question. "Yes. She was checking on us." "Yes. She knows something is different." Oliver's eyes were old. Too old for 8. She can always tell when things are different. I walked over and smoothed his hair. Then we'll just have to be very careful. Can you do that? Can you pretend everything is normal when she calls? He nodded slowly. I've been pretending for 6 years. I can do it a little longer. My heart broke and swelled at the same time. This child, this brave, broken, beautiful child, had survived so much, and he was still standing, still fighting. I'm going to end this, I promised him. I'm going to make sure she never hurts us again. I know, Grandma. He went back to his drawing. That's why I told you. Because I knew you would fix it. After Oliver fell asleep, I spread everything across the coffee table. The unexecuted will, the draft divorce papers, the PI report, the funeral photograph, Victoria's financial records, Oliver's drawings. I lined up all the images of Ryan Mitchell, the surveillance photos from the PI, the funeral shot, and Oliver's drawing the tall figure with the rectangle in his hand. A phone. Recording. The pieces clicked together like the tumblers of a lock. Ryan Mitchell had been there the night Marcus died. He had watched Victoria push her husband down the stairs, and instead of calling for help, instead of trying to stop it, he had recorded it. Why? Why would someone film a murder unless they planned to use it? The payments to RM Holdings LLC. Victoria had been sending money to that account for 18 months. Thousands of dollars, every month like clockwork. Not gifts to a lover. Blackmail payments to a witness. Ryan Mitchell had evidence of the murder video evidence, and he had been using it to bleed Victoria dry. That was why the money was gone. That was why Victoria was desperate enough to kill me now to get control of Oliver's inheritance so she could keep paying the blackmailer. But Ryan had the video. If I could find him. If I could convince him to turn over that footage, it would prove everything. Victoria pushing Marcus. The premeditation. The cover-up. I stared at Ryan Mitchell's photograph, his confident smile, his expensive suit. He was a blackmailer, a witness to murder, possibly an accomplice. He was not a good man, but he was the key to everything. 10 days until Victoria returned. 10 days to track down Ryan Mitchell. 10 days to get the evidence I needed. I picked up the phone and dialed the number ending in 4599 again. Voicemail again. This time I didn't hang up. Mr. Mitchell, I said, my voice steady in the quiet house. My name is Eleanor Thornton. I believe you knew my son Marcus, and I believe you know exactly what happened to him on Christmas Eve. I paused, letting the words sink in for whoever was listening later. I know about the payments. I know about the video. I'm not interested in money, and I'm not interested in your affair with my daughter-in-law. I'm interested in the truth. I think we should talk before Victoria gets back from Paris. Because when she does, the money runs out. And I suspect you know that. I left my number. Call me. I hung up. The bait was set. Now I just had to wait and see what kind of predator came hunting. The text came at 8 in the morning. My phone buzzed against the kitchen counter, a harsh, insect-like sound in the quiet house. I picked it up, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Unknown number. No name, just words on a screen that made the blood freeze in my veins. Mrs. Thornton, interesting voicemail. We should talk, but not yet. V has eyes everywhere. Wait for my signal. R. Ryan Mitchell. He had heard my message. He had responded. The bait had worked. But that last line changed the temperature of the room. V has eyes everywhere. I read it 3 times, 4 times. Victoria has eyes. Watching. But watching what? Watching whom? Was someone in this house reporting to her? Was she monitoring my phone logs remotely? Had she installed hidden cameras in the years she owned this house that I had never found? The walls suddenly felt closer. The air felt thinner, insufficient to fill my lungs. Grandma! Oliver stood in the doorway, still in his pajamas, clutching his sketchbook. His hair was tousled, but his gaze was sharp. He noticed the phone in my hand, the tension in my shoulders. What's wrong? His raspy voice asked. I showed him the message. I didn't believe in hiding the truth from him anymore. He had survived the truth for 6 years. He deserved to know the shape of the danger we were in. His face went pale, but his eyes stayed steady. My brave boy. He's being careful, Oliver whispered. That's smart. Mommy knows people, bad people who do things for money. I hadn't considered that. I had thought of Victoria as a solitary predator. But of course she would have allies. People she had paid, people she had charmed. People like Ryan Mitchell used to be men who owed her favors or feared her wrath. We weren't just fighting one woman. We were fighting a network. We keep investigating, I said, forcing steel into my voice. But we're more careful now. We trust no one except each other. Oliver nodded. And we wait for his signal. Yes, we wait. But waiting, I was learning, was the hardest part of all. I left Oliver with Mrs. Patterson again. She was the only variable in this equation I felt I could trust, and drove downtown with the DVR unit wrapped in a towel in my trunk. The tech shop was tucked into a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a nail salon. It was the kind of place you would never notice unless you were looking for it cramped smelling of ozone and soldering iron. Derek was behind the counter. He was younger than I expected, maybe 25, with sleeves of tattoos and the patient, tired expression of someone who spent his life fixing other people's mistakes. This is it. He turned the heavy black box over in his hands. Mid-2010s model, hard drive recording. Don't see these much anymore. Everyone uses the cloud now. Can you recover the data? He examined the ports, the cracked casing. The power supply is shot, obviously, but the drive itself. He shook it gently. No rattle. The drive sounds intact. The problem is, if this was a backup loop, it overwrites itself every 48 hours unless it's stopped. It was stopped, I said. 6 years ago. Right, but sitting in an unconditioned attic for 6 years, heat damage, magnetic degradation. Files get corrupted, fragmented. He looked up at me. It's not like on TV, ma'am. I can't just press a button and get 4K video. Whatever you can recover, I pleaded. Anything, a single frame, a timestamp, anything at all. Derek nodded slowly. I'll have to pull the platters, mount them in a clean reader, and run a sector-by-sector recovery. It takes time. How much time? 3 to 4 days. Maybe faster if I get lucky and the index file is intact. 3 to 4 days. How much? $300 for the recovery attempt. More if I have to reconstruct video files. I paid in cash. $300 that wouldn't show up on any credit card statement Victoria might be monitoring. Ma'am, I have to ask. Derek set the DVR on the workbench behind him. Is this for a legal matter? Because if there's a subpoena or a chain of custody issue... I met his eyes. It's for my family. That's all I can say. He held my gaze for a moment, then nodded. Family stuff. Got it. I'll do my best. I'll call you. I walked back to my car with my heart in my throat. 3 to 4 days. Would that be enough time? Would Victoria still be in Paris? Would Ryan Mitchell make contact before then? So many variables. So many ways this could fall apart. But I couldn't think about that. I could only keep moving forward. The laptop was waiting for me when I got home. Marcus's laptop. Password protected. The last barrier between me and my son's digital secrets. Oliver and I sat at the kitchen table, the computer humming open in front of us. The login screen glowed blue, a blank field waiting for the key that would unlock the past. What would Daddy use? Oliver asked, leaning his chin on his hands. What was important to him? I had already tried the obvious things. Birthdays, anniversaries, names, the dog's name. Nothing worked. Your father was careful, I said. He wouldn't use something easy to guess, not if he knew she was watching him. Oliver's brow furrowed in concentration. He used to call me his little bear. He had nicknames for everyone. He called you Mom E with a capital E. He called Grandpa the Admiral, even though he was never in the Navy. I typed Little Bear into the password field. Incorrect. Oliver Bear. Incorrect. Mom E. Incorrect. I leaned back frustrated. What would Marcus choose? Something meaningful. Something personal. Something only he would know. Or something he wanted to remember. Then I remembered the journal, the tone of it, the desperation, the entry dated December 23rd, Protect, Oliver, and the entry before that where he mentioned the new will. December 20th, 2019. Marcus was a man of logic, but he was also a father terrified for his son. He wouldn't use a random word. He would use a mission statement. I looked at Oliver. He wanted to protect you. That was the only thing on his mind at the end. I typed slowly, "Protect Oliver, incorrect." I tried adding the year. The year everything changed. Protect Oliver 2019. The screen flickered. The loading icon spun. And then, the desktop. Marcus's desktop. It was like stepping into a time capsule. Folders and files and emails untouched for 6 years. The background was a photo of Oliver at the beach laughing. It worked. My voice was barely a whisper. Oliver. It worked. I reached for the mouse, my hand trembling. I was ready to explore, ready to find every secret my son had hidden to save us. The phone rang. Victoria. The name on the screen hit me like a physical blow. I slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Oliver's eyes went wide with panic. I took a deep breath, composed my face though no one could see me, answered with a voice that betrayed nothing. "Hello? Eleanor." Victoria's voice was silk and honey, but with that underlying metallic tang I had learned to fear. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Not at all. Oliver and I were just having lunch." "How sweet. You two are so precious together." A pause, a beat too long. "Listen, there's been a change of plans." My stomach dropped. "Oh, Paris is wonderful, but honestly, my parents are exhausting. The constant shopping, the endless dinners. I need my own bed, my own space, my own—" Another pause, heavy, loaded. "Family. No. No. When are you coming back?" "Tomorrow morning. First flight out. I should be home by noon." I looked at Oliver. His face had gone white. "That's wonderful." I managed the lie, tasting like ash in my mouth. "We'll make sure everything is ready for you." "I'm sure you will. See you soon, Eleanor. Give Oliver my love." The line went dead. Tomorrow. Victoria would be home tomorrow. Less than 24 hours. I had expected 10 more days. I had counted on 10 more days. The DVR wouldn't be ready. Derek needed 3 days. Ryan hadn't given his signal. The laptop was unlocked but unexplored. Everything was half finished, half discovered, half proven. And now the killer was coming home. She arrived at noon the next day. I watched from the living room window as the taxi pulled into the driveway. Victoria emerged like a movie star arriving at a premiere oversized designer sunglasses, a camel hair cashmere coat, Louis Vuitton luggage in matching tan. She didn't look like someone who had cut a trip short because she missed her family. She looked like someone who had smelled blood in the water and had come home to hunt. Oliver stood beside me silent. His hand found mine and squeezed tight. We had prepared for this. We had rehearsed all morning. He would not speak. He would be the mute child everyone expected. No matter what Victoria said or did, he would not make a sound. The front door opened. "Hello, my darlings." Victoria swept into the foyer like she owned the oxygen in the room. "Did you miss me?" She hugged Oliver first. I watched him go rigid in her arms, his face carefully blank. She held him for a moment too long, her hands testing the tension in his shoulders, studying him. "You seem different, sweetheart," she murmured. "Calmer. Has Grandma been taking good care of you?" Oliver nodded, said nothing. Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly behind her sunglasses. Then she turned to me. "Eleanor?" She kissed my cheek. Her perfume was expensive and cloying. Her smile was deadly. "The house looks different somehow. Have you been redecorating?" "Just some cleaning. You know how it is. I needed something to keep busy." Her eyes moved slowly across the room. The living room, the kitchen doorway, the basement door. Back to me. "Cleaning, of course." She didn't believe me. I could see it in the set of her jaw, the slight tension around her eyes. The cat knew the mouse was hiding something. She just didn't know what yet. "Well," Victoria set down her bag, "I'm absolutely exhausted. Jet lag is brutal, but first, I think I'll make us all some tea. The cup sat in front of me, steam rising, death waiting inside. Victoria had insisted on making dinner that night. You've been taking care of everything while I was gone. Let me take care of you for once. Her voice was warm, solicitous, the voice of a devoted daughter-in-law. I knew better. She moved through the kitchen like she owned it, opening cabinets, stirring pots, humming softly to herself. All the while her eyes tracked Oliver and me like radar. Oliver sat at the table in perfect stillness. His sketchbook was hidden under his mattress. His voice was locked away again. He was playing the role of his life. Watching him pretend, it hurt more than anything. He seemed so peaceful, Victoria observed, glancing at Oliver as she chopped vegetables. More settled than usual. What's your secret, Eleanor? Routine. A consistent schedule. It helps him feel safe. Does it? She turned back to the stove. I always thought routine made him worse. All that predictability. No stimulation. She was testing me. Every word was a probe. And then she reached for the tea kettle. I know you've been enjoying my special blend, Victoria said, pouring hot water into her grandmother's antique teapot. The one she had inherited from Marcus's grandmother. The one she had claimed for herself. I brought more back from Paris. A lovely little shop in the 5th arrondissement. She hadn't brought tea from Paris. She hadn't had time to shop if she came back this fast. But I smiled and nodded like I believed her. The tea was poured, a cup placed in front of me. Victoria sat across the table, her own cup untouched. Drink up, Eleanor. You look tired. The liquid was amber-colored. It smelled like chamomile. And something else. Something bitter underneath. The smell I had identified the morning Oliver spoke. I picked up the cup. My hand was steady, though my heart was thrashing. I brought it to my lips. Victoria watched. Her eyes never left my hands. I tilted the cup, let the liquid touch my lips, held it in my mouth without swallowing. I said, lowering the cup. Delicious. I set it down and smiled. Is something wrong? Victoria's head tilted slightly. You usually drink faster than that. Just savoring it. It's been a long week. Has it? What have you been up to? The questions were coming faster now, sharper. Nothing special. Taking care of Oliver. Some cleaning, reading. You know how it is. Do I? I held her gaze. 2 women across a kitchen table playing a game with life and death as the stakes. Excuse me, I said, standing. I need to use the restroom. I walked calmly down the hallway. My legs felt like lead. I closed the bathroom door, locked it, turned on the faucet full blast, and then I spat the tea into the toilet. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the porcelain edge of the sink. The taste of it, bitter metallic wrong, lingered on my tongue like a curse. I rinsed my mouth 3 times. 4 times. I scraped my tongue with my teeth. She had increased the dose. I was sure of it. The original tea had been subtle, designed for slow accumulation. This was stronger. It burned. She was getting impatient. She wanted this over. I stared at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes wide with fear. How long could I keep this up? How many more cups of poison could I pretend to drink? How many more lies could I tell before she caught me? When I returned to the kitchen, Victoria was watching me with new interest. Feel better. Much better. Thank you for the tea. I'm so glad you're enjoying it. I made extra. She smiled that cold, careful smile. Enough for every night until... She didn't finish the sentence. Until what? Until I was dead. Until she had what she wanted. Until what, Victoria? She laughed. Light, musical, deadly. Until I can find more at the specialty shop, of course. It's a rare blend. Hard to source. But that wasn't what she meant. We both knew it. The clock was ticking, and Victoria was counting down to something. I slipped into Oliver's room at 11:30 that night. He was awake, sitting up in bed, waiting for me. Of course he was. Neither of us would be sleeping much now. She knows, he whispered, his raspy voice barely audible. I can tell. The way she looks at me, the way she looks at everything. She suspects. That's not the same as knowing. But she's watching. She was in my room while I pretended to sleep. My blood ran cold. What? Earlier, before dinner, she came in and went through my desk. I heard the drawers, opening and closing. She was looking for something. His drawings. She was looking for his drawings, the evidence he had created over 6 years of silence. Did she find anything? Oliver shook his head. He reached under his mattress and pulled out his sketchbook. I hid it, under here. She didn't think to look. Smart boy, my brilliant, brave, terrified grandson. We need to be faster, I said. We need to find everything before she does. What about the laptop? Did you look at it? I had been so focused on surviving Victoria's return that I had barely thought about Marcus's computer. It was hidden under my own mattress, now waiting. Tonight, after she's asleep, I'll go through everything. Oliver nodded. Then in a voice almost too soft to hear, what if she figures it out? What if she finds the evidence? Before we do? I took his hands in mine. Then we run. We take everything we have and we go to the police and we tell them everything, even if it's not enough, even if they don't believe us at first. But what if they believe her instead? They believed her before. They believed her because no one told them the truth. This time is different. This time we have you. This time we have the journal and the will and the DVR if Derek can recover the files. And Ryan Mitchell, if he really has what we think he has. Yes. Ryan Mitchell, too. Oliver was quiet for a moment. I don't trust him. The man who smiled when Daddy fell. How can we trust him? We can't. Not entirely. But sometimes you have to work with people you don't trust to defeat something worse. He thought about that. Like an alliance, in a war. Exactly like that. I kissed his forehead and stood. Try to sleep. I'll be in my room. If anything happens, I know, I'll scream. I slipped out of Oliver's room and made my way down the hallway. And then I stopped. The floorboard beneath my foot had creaked, loud in the silent house. I looked up. Victoria was standing at the end of the hall. She was wearing her silk robe, arms crossed, leaning against the doorframe of her bedroom. Watching me. How long had she been there? How much had she heard? Trouble sleeping, Eleanor. Her voice was pleasant, normal. But her eyes. In the shadows of the hallway, her eyes were black holes. Just checking on Oliver. Old habits. Old habits. She repeated it slowly, like she was tasting the words to see if they were rotten. You've been spending a lot of time with him lately, more than usual. He's my grandson. I love him. Of course you do. She took a step closer. The hallway felt like it was shrinking, the walls pressing in. We all love Oliver. He's such a special boy. I said nothing. Waited. It's funny, though. Victoria tilted her head. He seems different since I've been gone. Calmer, like I said, but also watchful. Like he's paying attention to things he never noticed before. Children are perceptive. Are they? Another step. Or are they being taught to pay attention by someone? The silence stretched between us, two women in a dark hallway. One of us a killer, one of us a hunter. I don't know what you mean, Victoria, she smiled, that cold, empty smile that never reached her eyes. Of course you don't. Good night, Eleanor. Sleep well. She turned and walked away. Her footsteps faded. A door opened and closed. I stood frozen in the hallway for a full minute before my legs would move. When I finally made it back to my room, I locked the door behind me. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. I sat on the edge of my bed and tried to breathe. Victoria had been watching, listening, waiting in the dark like a spider in a web. She knew something was different. She could feel the shift in the house, the change in the air. 6 years of carefully constructed lies were starting to crack. I thought about the laptop hidden under my mattress, the DVR at the tech shop, the tea I had pretended to drink, the sketchbook Oliver was guarding with his life, Ryan Mitchell's cryptic text. So many secrets, so many threads. and Victoria was pulling at all of them. She didn't know what I had found. Not yet. She didn't know about the journal, or the unexecuted will, or the PI report. She didn't know that Oliver had spoken that her greatest weapon had turned against her, but she knew I was hiding something. And Victoria Thornton did not like secrets that weren't her own. I stared at the locked door, listened to the silence of the house, felt the weight of everything pressing down on me. 9 days numb. I didn't have 9 days. I probably didn't even have 9 hours. She knew I was getting close, and that made her more dangerous than ever. I waited until 2 in the morning. The house had been silent for hours, settling into the heavy, breathing quiet of deep winter. Victoria had gone to bed at 11, her door closing with a soft, decisive click that sounded less like privacy and more like containment. I had lain awake, staring at the ceiling, counting the minutes until I was sure the rhythm of the house meant she was truly asleep. Now I moved through the darkness of my own bedroom like a thief in my own home. The laptop was under my mattress where I had hidden it. I retrieved it slowly, carefully, every rustle of fabric sounding like a scream in the quiet. I sat on the floor far from the door and opened the lid. The screen glowed to life, casting a ghostly blue light on my hands. Marcus's desktop. I had successfully unlocked it with Protect Oliver 2019, but I hadn't had time to look. To really look. The file structure was neat, organized. Work, personal, finances, Oliver. But there was one folder sitting apart from the others tucked into the bottom right corner of the screen. It was labeled simply V. Victoria. I double-clicked. A password prompt appeared. Of course. Marcus would protect this. He would keep his evidence behind another wall. He had been a lawyer. He understood the chain of evidence, the need for security. I stared at the blinking cursor. What would he use for this specific folder? The login password had been about his mission, Protect Oliver. This folder. This was about the threat. I tried Victoria. Incorrect. I tried divorce. Incorrect. I tried freedom. Incorrect. I closed my eyes and thought about my son, about the pain he must have been in during those final months. The betrayal. I typed the truth. The folder opened. My breath hitched. Inside were hundreds of files, emails, screenshots, PDF documents, audio files. It wasn't just a collection of grievances, it was a dossier. A legal case being built brick by brick against his own wife. My hands trembled as I clicked on the first subfolder, Drafts, Unsent. Marcus had used his email drafts as a diary, a place to pour out thoughts he couldn't speak aloud, stored in the cloud where Victoria couldn't find them physically. I opened the earliest one. October 3rd, 2019. She's different. It's not just the distance anymore. It's the coldness. She looks at me like I'm not a person, but an obstacle. I asked her about the charges at the hotel in Hartford, and she didn't even blink. She lied to my face smoothly, easily. How long has she been lying? October 15th, 2019. I unlocked her phone while she was in the shower. I know, invasion of privacy. But I had to know. Texts to R. Nothing explicit but the tone, intimacy, familiarity. Don't worry about him. He's clueless. Clueless. Is that what she thinks I am? November 8th, 2019. The PI confirmed it. Ryan Mitchell, financial advisor, high roller. I looked him up. He manages assets for the ultra-wealthy. Why is he interested in Victoria? She spends money, she doesn't invest it, unless they're planning something else. I moved to December. The tone of the entries shifted from confusion to resolve. December 10th, 2019. I told her I want a divorce. I didn't mention Ryan. I want to save that for the lawyers. I just said it wasn't working. Her reaction scared me. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just stared at me and said, "If you try to take Oliver Marcus, I will bury you. I will take everything you have, and I will make sure you never see your son again." She means it. She's not fighting for the marriage. She's fighting for possession. December 18th, 2019. She's planning something. I can feel it. She's moving money around, small transfers I wasn't supposed to notice. And she's whispering on the phone late at night. When I walk into the room, she stops. I'm meeting Henderson on the 20th. I'm cutting her out. The will, the insurance, everything. If she wants a war, I'll give her one. But I have to be smart. I have to wait until the papers are ready. December 23rd, 2019. One day before he died. She knows. I don't know how, but she knows I went to Henderson. She's been watching me all day. Smiling. That terrible empty smile. I should take Oliver and leave tonight. Go to Mom's. But it's Christmas Eve tomorrow. Oliver is so excited about Santa. If I leave now, I cause a scene, I traumatize him, and I give her ammunition for the custody hearing. He kidnapped the child on Christmas, she'll say. I'll wait. 2 more days. I'll fake it through the holiday, and on the 26th, I'm filing the papers. I'm taking Oliver and I'm getting out. God give me the strength to get through this holiday. I wiped tears from my cheeks. He hadn't known he was going to die. He thought he was in a legal battle, not a fight for his life. He stayed for Oliver. He stayed to give his son one last happy Christmas. And that kindness killed him. I closed the drafts folder and opened the one labeled audio. There were only 3 files, voice memos recorded on his phone. I plugged in my headphones. I couldn't risk Victoria hearing even a whisper and pressed play on the first one. Dated December 21st, 2019. The quality was grainy, recorded from inside a pocket or a drawer. Victoria's voice. Think you can just discard me after everything I've put up with, Marcus. It's over, Victoria. I know about Ryan. I know about the money. Victoria laughing low and dark. You think knowing changes anything? You're so naive, Marcus. You think the law protects you. The law is just paper. Reality is what you can get away with, Marcus. I'm taking Oliver. The courts will see the evidence. Victoria. The courts will see what I show them. A grieving widow is very sympathetic, Marcus. A divorced woman is just messy. A grieving widow. She had said it 3 days before he died. She was already trying on the role. I played the second file. December 22nd. Victoria. Ryan says you've been digging, hiring investigators. That's dangerous, Marcus. Ryan doesn't like loose ends. Marcus. Is that a threat? Victoria. It's financial advice. Stop digging, or you might fall into a hole you can't climb out of. I pulled the headphones off my hands, shaking. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a corporate merger of murder. Victoria provided the access. Ryan provided the method and the cleanup. They had treated my son's life like a failing asset to be liquidated. I shut the laptop down. I had read enough. I knew the why. I knew the how. Now I just needed to survive long enough to prove it. I went to Oliver's room at 6 a.m. He was already awake, sitting up in bed with his knees pulled to his chest, staring at the door, waiting for me. She was walking in the hall last night, he whispered as soon as I entered. I heard her. She stopped outside my door for a long time. She didn't come in. No. She just stood there, breathing. My stomach turned, the predator pacing the cage. I need to ask you something, Oliver, I said, sitting on the edge of his bed. I need you to tell me exactly what happened that night, the night Daddy died. I need every detail, no matter how small. Oliver's face went pale, but he nodded. He was ready. I told you about the pushing, he said. Yes, but before that, you said Daddy was on the stairs. Did he look like he was trying to run away? Oliver closed his eyes, accessing the memory he had kept locked in a vault for 6 years. No, he said slowly. He wasn't running. He was backing up. He looked confused. He was holding his hands up like this. Oliver raised his small palms, like he was trying to stop a car. Defensive, I murmured. Patricia had said there were bruises on his forearms. And Mommy, she was holding the phone. It was on speaker. I could hear the man. Ryan. Yes, Ryan. Oliver shivered. Daddy was begging. He said, Victoria, please, we can fix this. And Mommy said, it's too late for fixing. It's time for cleaning. Cleaning. And then Ryan spoke. Yes. He asked, is he in position? My blood ran cold. Is he in position? Like a stage director. Like a sniper. Mommy looked at Daddy's feet. He was right at the edge of the top step, and she said yes. And then Ryan said, "Push him. Do it now. I'm recording everything." I'm recording everything. That was the key. That was the leverage. Ryan had directed the murder to ensure he had permanent control over Victoria. It was mutually assured destruction. And after Daddy fell, I asked, forcing myself to ask the hardest question. What did Mommy do? Oliver opened his eyes. They were wet with tears. She looked down the stairs. Just looked, for a long time. Then she looked up at the camera, at her phone, and she smiled. She smiled at the phone. Yes, like she was showing the man she did a good job, and then... Oliver's voice broke. Then she looked at me. Oh, sweetheart. She saw me. I was hiding by the railing. She walked over to me. She didn't look scary anymore. She looked happy. She grabbed my arm really hard and she leaned down and whispered, "Daddy had an accident. A terrible accident. And if you ever tell anyone differently, you'll have an accident too." I pulled him into my arms and held him while he shook. She hadn't just threatened him. She had promised him death, to her own child. Ryan's text came at 9 a.m. I was in the kitchen forcing myself to eat toast while Victoria read a magazine at the table. She looked relaxed, refreshed, as if she hadn't spent the night patrolling the hallway. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One short vibration. I waited. I took a sip of water. I stood up and walked to the pantry pretending to look for something before I pulled the phone out. Unknown number. Tonight, midnight. The old mill parking lot on Route 7. Come alone. If I see a tail, the deal is off. R. My heart hammered against my ribs. Midnight. 15 hours from now. I typed back quickly. I'll be there. Then I deleted the entire conversation and the call log. Everything all right, Eleanor? I jumped. Victoria was standing right behind me. I hadn't heard her move. Her perfume, that sickly sweet floral scent, filled the small pantry. Fine, I said, turning around. Just checking the shopping list. We're out of milk. Her eyes flicked to my pocket where I had shoved the phone. You seem jumpy, she said. Nervous. I'm just tired, Victoria. I didn't sleep well. No. She smiled, leaning against the doorframe, blocking my exit. I'm not surprised. Guilt is terrible for insomnia. Guilt. I met her eyes. What do I have to be guilty about? Oh, I don't know. She examined her fingernails. Snooping. Betraying the family privacy. Filling Oliver's head with nonsense. She looked up and her gaze was sharp as a scalpel. I know you went to Henderson's office, Eleanor. I know you've been asking questions. She knew. Marcus was my son, I said, keeping my voice steady. I have a right to visit his lawyer. Marcus is dead, she said flatly, and digging up the past won't bring him back. It will only dirty the people who are still here. She took a step closer. I'm warning you, Eleanor. For your own good, stop digging. You might not like what you find buried in the dirt. Is that a threat? It's advice. Like I gave Marcus. She smiled again. He didn't listen either. She turned and walked away, leaving me trembling in the pantry. She had admitted it. In her own twisted way, she had just admitted it. He didn't listen either. The confrontation had begun. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was daring me to make a move. I prepared for the meeting in silence. 8 o'clock. Victoria was watching television in the living room, the volume turned up loud. Oliver was in his room, supposedly asleep. I went to my room and gathered what I needed. Copies of the documents from the laptop printed at the library days ago, just in case. My phone. A small canister of pepper spray I had bought years ago and never used, tucked into my coat pocket. And the USB drives Derek had given me. Oliver appeared at my door just as I was putting on my coat. You're going to meet him, he rasped. Yes. The man who told Mommy to push Daddy. Yes. His face was pale, but his jaw was set. What if he hurts you? I knelt down so I was at his eye level. He won't hurt me. He wants to make a deal. He's scared Oliver. He knows Victoria is dangerous and he wants out. But what if I'm not back by 6 a.m, I said, handing him a folded piece of paper. You take this. It has Detective Martinez's number and Patricia Chen's number. You call them. You tell them everything. Can you do that? He took the paper, his hand trembling. I don't want you to go. I have to. He has the video. The video is the only way we make sure she goes away forever. Grandma. Yes. Be careful. He smiled when Daddy fell. Remember that. I remember. I kissed his forehead and stood. Lock your door. Don't open it for anyone but me. I slipped out the back door at 11:30. The night was bitter cold. The sky was clear, the stars hard and bright like diamonds. I walked to my car, parked at the end of the driveway to avoid the noise of the garage door. I looked back at the house. It stood dark and silent against the night sky. My home. My prison. Somewhere inside, Victoria was sleeping. Or maybe she was awake, planning her next move. She thought she had won. She thought I was a confused old woman, easily intimidated, easily disposed of. She was wrong. I started the car and drove toward Route 7, toward the man who had orchestrated my son's murder. Toward the truth. Toward the end of the nightmare. I arrived at the old mill parking lot at 11:55. The mill had been abandoned for decades, a skeleton of brick and broken glass standing against the winter sky. Route 7 was empty, the asphalt slick with frost. The only light came from a flickering sodium lamp that buzzed like a trapped insect. I parked in the darkest corner, turned off my headlights, and waited. The cold seeped through the windows instantly. I checked the canister of pepper spray in my pocket. It felt ridiculously inadequate. I was a grandmother armed with a purse and a can of mace, waiting to meet a man who had orchestrated a murder. But I was also a mother. And that made me dangerous in a way Ryan Mitchell couldn't calculate. At midnight exactly, headlights swept across the cracked pavement. A black BMW, sleek, expensive, out of place in this graveyard of industry, pulled in. It parked 20 feet away facing the exit, always ready to run. The driver's door opened. Ryan Mitchell stepped out. He looked exactly like the photos, yet different. The arrogance was still there in the set of his shoulders, the cut of his expensive wool coat. But up close in the harsh yellow light, he looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes. He looked like a man who had spent 6 years looking over his shoulder. I got out of my car. The wind whipped my hair across my face. I pushed it back and walked toward him, stopping 10 feet away. Mrs. Thornton, he said. His voice was smooth, practiced. The voice of a man who sold high-risk investments to wealthy people. Thank you for coming alone. Let's skip the pleasantries, I said, my voice steady despite the cold. You know why I'm here? I do. He shoved his hands into his pockets. You want the video, the insurance policy. I want the evidence that proves Victoria killed my son. Evidence you've been using to bleed her dry for 6 years. He smirked, a humorless twitch of the lips. Blackmail is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as a consulting fee, for services rendered. You directed a murder, I spat. My grandson heard you. Push him. Do it now. He heard every word. The smirk vanished. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine unease in his eyes. The boy remembers that. He remembers everything. He remembers your voice. He remembers your face at the funeral. He remembers you smiling when Marcus fell. I took a step closer, channeling every ounce of rage I had suppressed for 6 years. You're not just a witness, Ryan. You're a co-conspirator. Conspiracy to commit murder. That's a life sentence in this state. Which is why we're here, he said, his voice hardening. Victoria is becoming unstable. She's burning through cash too fast. She's making mistakes, and now she's trying to kill you to access the trust fund. He shook his head. That draws heat. Investigations, autopsies. I don't like heat, Mrs. Thornton. So you want to cut a deal. I want out. Clean. He pulled a smartphone from his pocket. I give you the video, the original file. Metadata, timestamp, everything. It proves Victoria pushed him. It proves she planned it. And in return, you keep my name out of it. You tell the police you found the video on a flash drive Marcus hid. You tell them you don't know who recorded it. You're asking me to let you get away with murder. I'm asking you to be pragmatic. He tapped the phone against his palm. Without this video, it's your word against hers. A traumatized child versus a grieving widow. She'll win, Eleanor. She always wins. She'll take the boy, she'll take the money, and you'll end up dead from heart failure within the month." He was right. God help me, he was right. "Give it to me," I said. "Transfer first." He tapped the screen. "I'm sending a secure link to your number. One download allowed. Once you have it, our business is concluded. I'm leaving the country tomorrow." My phone buzzed. I pulled it out. A text message with a link. "Open it," he commanded. "Check it." I clicked the link. A video player opened. I saw the hallway. I saw Marcus backing away. I saw Victoria's hands. It was shaky. Handheld. Filmed from the top of the stairs just behind Victoria's shoulder. It was horrifyingly intimate. "It's all there," Ryan said. "Audio too." "Fine," I whispered, feeling sick. "You have your deal. Just go." "One piece of advice, Mrs. Thornton." He opened his car door. "Don't underestimate her. Victoria isn't just a killer, she's a survivor. If she thinks she's cornered, she won't surrender. She'll burn the whole house down with you inside it." "I'm counting on it," I said. He paused, looking at me with something like begrudging respect. "Good luck." He got in the car. The engine roared to life. He spun the tires on the frost-slicked pavement and sped away, leaving me alone in the dark with the evidence of my son's murder in my pocket. I drove home slowly, my mind racing. I had it. I actually had it. Ryan Mitchell was a monster, but he was a useful one. With this video, Victoria couldn't hide. She couldn't spin the story. I pulled into the driveway at 3 a.m. The house was dark, silent. I parked the car and walked to the back door, shivering. In my haste to leave earlier, I had forgotten to grab my heavy coat, wearing only a light cardigan. The cold had settled deep into my bones. I unlocked the back door and stepped into the kitchen, moving quietly, intending to creep back to my room and lock the door until morning. Click. The kitchen overhead light snapped on, blindingly bright. I froze. Victoria was sitting at the kitchen table. She was wearing her silk robe, a cup of tea steaming in front of her. Her hair was perfectly brushed. Her face was fresh and alert. She hadn't just woken up. She had been waiting. "Interesting time for a drive, Eleanor," she said. Her voice was calm, conversational. I couldn't sleep," I stammered, blinking against the light. "I went for a drive to clear my head. At 2 a.m. Her eyes traveled over my shivering form, my wind-blown hair, the red flush on my cheeks from the biting cold. Without a coat, I didn't realize how cold it was until I was already out. "You're a terrible liar, Eleanor." Victoria stood up slowly, gracefully. "You always have been. That's why Marcus got away with hiding things from you for so long. You see what you want to see." "I don't know what you mean." "Don't you?" She walked toward me. She didn't look angry. She looked disappointed, like a teacher with a slow student. "I know you've been up to something. The way you look at me. The way Oliver avoids me. The whispering." She stopped 2 feet away. I could smell the chamomile tea on her breath. "And tonight," she said softly, "you leave the house in the middle of the night. You come back looking like you've seen a ghost. Or," she tilted her head, "like you've met one." My hand tightened around the phone in my pocket. Did she know? Had Ryan told her no, Ryan wanted out? He wouldn't warn her. "I just went for a drive, Victoria, that's all." She studied my face for a long moment. Then she smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "You know, I was looking for something in your room while you were gone. Just tidying up." My heart stopped. The laptop. I had hidden it under the mattress again. "And imagine my surprise," she continued, turning to the counter, "when I found Marcus's old computer, the one I thought I had lost years ago." She pointed to the counter. There, next to the toaster, sat the shattered remains of Marcus's laptop. The screen was smashed. The keyboard was bent in half. It looked like it had been taken to the garage and introduced to a hammer. "I dropped it," Victoria said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Accidentally, several times. Then I thought, well, it's broken anyway. So I ran a magnet over the hard drive, just to be safe. You know how dangerous identity theft is these days." She turned back to me, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Whatever you thought was on there, Eleanor. Whatever silly little secrets Marcus kept." They're gone. Dust. She had destroyed it. The journal entries, the audio recordings of her threats, the timeline, all gone. But she didn't know about Ryan. She didn't know I had the video on my phone right now. "Why would you do that?" I asked, forcing my voice to tremble. "It was Marcus's." "It was clutter," she snapped. "And I am cleaning house." She stepped closer, invading my personal space. "I'm tired of this, Eleanor. The sneaking, the suspicion. It's bad for Oliver. A toxic environment." She lowered her voice. "I think it's time for a change. A permanent one." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying enjoy your sleep tonight, because things are going to be very different tomorrow." She brushed past me, her silk robe whispering against my cardigan. At the doorway, she paused. "Oh, and Eleanor, lock your door. You never know who might be walking around at night." She laughed softly and disappeared into the hallway. I stood in the kitchen staring at the smashed laptop. She thought she had won. She thought she had destroyed the only evidence I had. She didn't know about the DVR Derek was fixing. She didn't know about the video Ryan had just sent me. She had just destroyed the past. But I held the future in my pocket. I went to my room and barricaded the door with a chair under the handle. I didn't sleep. I sat on the bed phone clutched in my hand, waiting for the sun. Derek called at 9 in the morning. I had spent the hours between dawn and 9 a.m. sitting by the window, watching the driveway, terrified Victoria would try to leave with Oliver. But the house remained quiet. When the phone rang, I answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Thornton." Derek's voice sounded tired but excited. "I have news about the DVR." "Did you find anything?" "It was tricky," he said. "Someone had formatted the drive, wiped the index. It looked empty." Victoria. She hadn't just turned it off. She had tried to erase it. But data is stubborn. When you delete a file, you don't actually erase the ones and zeros. You just remove the map to find them. The data sits there until it's overwritten." He paused. "And since the unit was unplugged right after, the data was never overwritten." "What did you find, Derek?" "I recovered a file. Fragmented, grainy, no audio. But it's there. Time-stamped December 24th, 2019, 11:52 p.m. "Tell me what it shows." "It shows the upstairs hallway. A fixed angle. You can see the stairs. You can see a woman. It looks like the woman who came in with you once." "The daughter-in-law." "Yes. She's arguing with a man, then she shoves him, hard, 2 hands on the chest. He goes backward down the stairs. And then she walks to the edge, looks down, then she turns around and she turns the camera off, or pulls the plug. The file ends there." I closed my eyes. It corroborated everything. Ryan's video showed the front view. The DVR showed the side view. It proved she didn't trip, didn't stumble. She shoved him, and then she deliberately disabled the security system to hide the evidence. "I made 3 copies, Derek said. One for you, one for the police, and one I uploaded to a secure cloud server. Just in case." "Smart man," I said. "I'm coming to get them now." "Mrs. Thornton, be careful. The woman in that video?" She didn't hesitate. "I know," I said. "I know." I hung up. I had 2 videos now, 2 angles of a murder. I unlocked my bedroom door and stepped into the hallway. The house was silent. Too silent. "Oliver!" I called out. No answer. I walked to his room. The door was open. The bed was made. The closet door was open. And the room was empty. Panic, cold and sharp, seized my chest. I ran to the living room. Empty. The kitchen. Empty. On the kitchen table, where the smashed laptop had been, there was a note, written on Victoria's heavy, cream-colored stationery. "Took Oliver for a little trip. The Marriott downtown. Don't worry, we're safe. My lawyer will be in touch regarding your visitation rights, if you have any left after your behavior lately." V. She had taken him. While I was on the phone with Derek, while I was barricaded in my room. She had woken him up, packed a bag, and taken him. She knew. She knew the walls were closing in, and she had taken the only leverage that mattered. My grandson. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. The time for that was over. I grabbed my purse. I checked the pepper spray. I made sure my phone was charged. "You made a mistake, Victoria," I whispered to the empty house. "You thought taking him would stop me." I walked out the door. "You just gave me a reason to burn you to the ground." I spent the next hour on the floor of Oliver's empty room. I didn't cry. I didn't wail. I sat cross-legged on the rug holding the note Victoria had left, breathing in the scent of the room, pencil shavings, laundry detergent, and the faint, sweet smell of a little boy who had finally started to feel safe. The despair was there, lurking at the edges of my mind like a black tide waiting to rush in. But I held it back with a dam built of something stronger. Cold, clinical rage. I looked at the note again. The Marriott downtown. She had taken him to a public place. That was smart. It meant I couldn't just storm in and drag him out without causing a scene that would get me arrested. She had legal custody. To the outside world, she was a concerned mother taking her son on a local getaway. I was the unstable grandmother she had been warning everyone about. She thought she had checkmated me. She thought that by destroying the laptop and taking the hostage, she had stripped me of my weapons. But she didn't know about Derek, and she didn't know about the file on my phone. I stood up. My knees cracked, but my legs were steady. I went to the closet. Tucked in the back behind a row of winter coats that Oliver had outgrown was a small cardboard box. Inside sat a worn brown teddy bear with a frayed red ribbon. Marcus had bought it for Oliver's first birthday. I picked it up. It smelled like dust and memories. "I'm coming for you," I whispered to the empty room. "Hold on, little bear. I'm coming." I didn't grab a coat. I grabbed my purse, my keys, and the determination of a woman with nothing left to lose. I drove to Derek's shop with a singular focus. The world outside my windshield was gray and blurry, but my destination was razor sharp. Derek was waiting. He had the closed sign flipped on the door, but he unlocked it as soon as he saw my car. "You look like you're going to war, Mrs. Thornton," he said as I walked in. "I am." He reached under the counter and pulled out a small anti-static bag containing 3 USB drives. "I verified the files again," he said, his voice serious. "It's all there. December 24th, 2019, 11:52 p.m. The timestamp is embedded in the metadata. It's admissible in court." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "And—" He hesitated, then pulled up a screen on his workbench computer. "I enhanced a few frames, right at the end, before the feed cuts." He pointed to the monitor. It was a freeze frame. Grainy black and white, but unmistakable. Victoria standing at the top of the stairs. Her arm was extended, her hand just pulling back from the shove. Her face was turned toward the camera lens. She wasn't just looking at the camera. She was reaching for the power cord. Her expression was focused, cold, efficient. "She knew exactly where the backup unit was," Derek said. "She didn't just turn off the system, she physically unplugged the redundancy drive. That proves knowledge, and intent to conceal." "Intent," I repeated. "That's the difference between manslaughter and murder one." I took the drives. They felt light in my hand, negligible. It was terrifying to think that justice for a human life could fit into something so small. "How much do I owe you for the enhancement?" Derek shook his head. "On the house. Just get her." "I will." I walked out to the car. I had the DVR evidence. I had Ryan's video on my phone. Now I needed an army. I called Patricia Chen from the parking lot. "Ellie," her voice was tight. "I've been worried. You haven't checked in." "She took him, Patty. She took Oliver." "What?" "She's at the Marriott downtown. She destroyed Marcus's laptop, so she thinks she's safe. She thinks she won." "Ellie, listen to me. Do not go to that hotel alone. If she's desperate enough to kidnap him..." "I'm not going alone, and I'm not going empty-handed." I took a deep breath. "I have the video, Patty, the one from Ryan Mitchell, and I have the security footage from the attic." Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. "You actually got it." "I have 2 angles of the murder. I have audio of the conspiracy. I have proof of the cover-up." I started the engine. "I'm coming to your office. Call that detective you mentioned. Martinez. Tell her to be there." "I'm calling her now. Drive safe, Ellie." The medical examiner's office was a sterile, fluorescent-lit fortress. I met Patricia in the lobby. She looked at my face at the dark circles under my eyes, the set of my jaw, and didn't ask if I was okay. She just swiped her badge and led me to the conference room. Detective Sarah Martinez was already there. She was formidable. That was the only word for her. Sharp features, dark eyes that missed nothing, and an air of coiled energy. She was looking at a file on the table, but she stood up when I entered. "Mrs. Thornton." No smile, just a nod. "Dr. Chen says you have a smoking gun." "I have the bullet, the gun, and the fingerprint," I said. I laid the USB drives on the table. Then I pulled out my phone. "This," I said, holding up the phone, "is from the accomplice, Ryan Mitchell. He recorded the murder from the top of the stairs." "The accomplice gave this to you?" Martinez asked, skepticism coloring her tone. "He wants immunity. He knows Victoria is spiraling and he wants to save his own skin." "Smart man," Martinez muttered. "Let's see it." We plugged the phone into the large monitor on the wall. I watched it again. I forced myself to watch. The hallway, Marcus pleading, Victoria's cold dismissal, Ryan's command, the push. The room was dead silent. I saw Martinez's jaw tighten. I saw her hand unconsciously move to the badge on her belt. When the video ended, Martinez didn't speak for a full minute. She rewound it, played the last 10 seconds again, the smile, Victoria's smile. "Jesus," Martinez whispered. It was a prayer and a curse. "And this," I said, plugging in Derek's USB drive, "is the security camera angle. It proves she physically shoved him. It proves she disabled the camera immediately after." We watched the grainy black and white footage. The mechanics of the fall were brutal. The intent was undeniable. Martinez stood up. She paced the length of the room, then turned to me. "This is it," she said. "This is everything. Motive means opportunity, intent, and execution. We have her dead to rights." "Then go get him," I said, my voice cracking for the first time. "Go get Oliver." Martinez looked at the clock on the wall. 2:00 p.m. "We can't just kick down the door, Mrs. Thornton. Not yet." "Why not? You saw what she did." "I saw what she did 6 years ago," Martinez said calmly. "And I know she has a child in that room right now. If we go in there guns blazing without a warrant, any good lawyer and she will hire the best will get the evidence thrown out on a technicality. They'll claim exigent circumstances didn't exist, that the video is a deepfake, that we violated her Fourth Amendment rights. She's a murderer. And we're going to prove it. But we have to do it by the book. If we mess this up, she walks. And if she walks, she takes Oliver and disappears." I gripped the edge of the table. "So what do we do?" "I go to a judge," Martinez said. "Right now, with this video. I get an emergency arrest warrant for first-degree murder, and I get an emergency protective order for the child." "How long?" "Judges are human. When they see this video," Martinez grimaced, "I'll have the warrant by tonight, but we don't execute it tonight." "Why?" "Because a nighttime raid on a hotel with a hostage is a recipe for disaster. Confusion, darkness, adrenaline. Things go wrong." She looked me in the eye. "We hit them in the morning, 9:00 a.m. When the hotel is busy, when she's awake but not expecting us. We control the environment." "One more night," I whispered. "You want me to leave him with her for one more night?" "I want you to get him back forever," Martinez said. "And this is the only way to guarantee that." I looked at Patricia. She nodded slowly. "She's right, Ellie. Victoria is cornered. If we panic her in the middle of the night, she might do something drastic. Drastic. Murder-suicide." The words hung unspoken in the air. "Fine," I said. The word tasted like bile. "One more night." I didn't go home. I couldn't go back to that empty house. I sat in the waiting room of the medical examiner's office while Patricia worked and Martinez went to the courthouse. I held Oliver's teddy bear in my lap, my thumb stroking the frayed ribbon. I thought about the timeline. 6 years ago, I had failed to see the signs. 10 days ago, I had started looking. Tomorrow, I would finish it. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. Radio silence from V. "She thinks she's safe. Don't disappoint me, Mrs. Thornton." I didn't reply. Ryan Mitchell was a ghost now, a loose end to be tied up later. At 8:00 p.m., Martinez returned. She looked exhausted, but she held a sheaf of papers in her hand like a sword. "We got it," she said. Judge didn't even hesitate, signed the warrant before the video even finished playing. So we stage at 8:30 a.m., a block from the Marriott. We go in at 9:00. She sat down next to me. "Mrs. Thornton, I need you to prepare yourself. When we go in, Victoria isn't going to surrender quietly. She's a narcissist who's losing control. She will use Oliver as a shield. She will lie. She will scream." "I know." "And Oliver," Martinez hesitated. "If she's been keeping him quiet this long, she might have sedated him." The tea, the poison, of course. She wouldn't just rely on threats. She would use chemistry. "I'm a nurse," I said. "I know how to handle sedation. Just get me to him." "We will." I spent the night on a cot in Patricia's office. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the hours. 10 hours, 8 hours, 4 hours. I thought of every moment I had missed with Oliver because of Victoria. Every smile she had stolen, every word she had silenced. I thought of Marcus. The way he had looked in the video, scared, pleading, but still trying to de-escalate, still trying to protect his family. "I tried to protect us," he had written. "I know, my love," I thought. "And tomorrow, I'm going to finish the job." When the sun finally rose, painting the sky in shades of violent orange and bruised purple, I was already dressed. I washed my face in the break room sink. I put on my blazer. I clipped my hair back. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the tired, grieving grandmother who had welcomed Victoria home 2 weeks ago. She was a soldier. I grabbed the teddy bear. I grabbed the paperwork. "Let's go," I said to the empty room. It was time to bring my grandson home. I woke before my alarm. The digital clock on the wall of the break room read 6:47. Dawn was just beginning to break, a bruise of pale purple light filtering through the blinds. I had slept maybe 3 hours curled on a cot in Patricia's office. They were fitful, shallow hours filled with dreams of Oliver calling for me from a room without doors. But today I would find the door. My body ached as I sat up. The exhaustion of the past 10 days, the sleepless nights, the terror, the grief had settled into my bones like lead. But as my feet hit the cold linoleum floor, a different sensation took over. Adrenaline. It pushed through the fatigue, sharpening my vision, steadying my hands. Today was the day. After 6 years of lies, after 10 days of investigation, after everything Victoria had done to bury the truth. Today we would dig it up. I checked my phone. One message from Detective Martinez sent at 6 a.m. "Warrant secured. Judge signed off on everything. Meet at 8:30 a.m. parking lot on Maple Street, 1 block east of the Marriott. Stay invisible until we give the go." I read the message 3 times. Let the words sink in. Judge signed off. It wasn't a hope anymore. It was a legal reality. I got up and began to prepare. I went to the restroom and splashed cold water on my face. I didn't dress for fashion. I dressed for battle. Comfortable shoes I could run in, dark slacks, a heavy blazer that made me look professional, serious, a woman who was done being a victim. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun. No makeup to hide the dark circles. Let them see the toll. Let them see what a grandmother looks like when she has been pushed too far. I gathered my things. The USB drives, Marcus's journal, the paperwork regarding the unexecuted will, and Oliver's teddy bear, the one I had rescued from his closet, the one his father had given him. I tucked it into my large tote bag, its frayed ear peeking out. I drove to the meeting point with my hands locked on the wheel at 10:02. The streets were quiet at this hour. Early commuters with coffee cups, delivery trucks. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that a few blocks away, a tactical team was assembling to take down a murderer. The parking lot on Maple Street was discreet, tucked behind a dry cleaner. It was nearly empty at 8:30. A few civilian cars, and 2 unmarked sedans. Detective Sarah Martinez was leaning against the hood of a gray Ford, drinking coffee from a paper cup. She looked formidable in the morning light, bulletproof vest under a windbreaker badge clipped to her belt, eyes scanning the perimeter. 2 uniformed officers, Rodriguez and Chen, stood nearby checking their equipment, They were big men, solid and serious. "Mrs. Thornton." Martinez straightened as I approached, crushing her coffee cup. "You're early." "I've been waiting 6 years. I'm done being late." She nodded, appreciating the resolve. "Okay, here's how this goes. We have a key card from management. We go up quietly, no sirens, no yelling until we breach the door. We want to catch her off guard." "And Oliver?" "EMS is staged 1 block over. Once we secure the suspect, they come in for the boy." She gestured to the officers. "Rodriguez and Chen take point. I'm right behind them. You stay behind me. Do not, I repeat, do not enter that room until I say it's clear. Victoria is cornered and she knows the walls are closing in. That makes her dangerous." "I understand." "Do you?" She looked at me hard. "Because when that door opens, she's going to try to manipulate you. She's going to try to trigger you. You have to be a stone, Mrs. Thornton. Can you do that?" I touched the teddy bear inside my bag. "I can be a stone." Martinez handed me a visitor badge. "Clip this on. Let's go." We walked toward the hotel. The Marriott lobby was bustling with the mundane chaos of morning checkout. Business travelers dragging rolling suitcases. Families herding tired children toward the breakfast buffet. The smell of burnt coffee and industrial cleaner hung in the air. No one paid attention to our grim little procession as we crossed the marble floor toward the elevators. To them, we were just people. Martinez flashed her badge to the front desk manager, who nodded nervously and pointed us toward the service elevator. 847. We stepped into the metal box. Rodriguez pressed the button for the 8th floor. The doors closed, sealing us in. 8 floors. It felt like climbing Everest. The elevator hummed and shuddered, and I watched the digital numbers tick upward. 3, 4, 5. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird trying to escape. Is he okay? Is he hurt? Did she realize we were coming? Ryan's warning echoed in my mind. V has eyes everywhere. 6, 7. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. The hallway stretched before us, long and lined with identical cream-colored doors. The carpet muffled our footsteps. It was quiet. The Do Not Disturb signs hung on a few knobs like sleeping eyes. Room 847 was at the end of the hall. Martinez signaled for silence. We moved in formation. Rodriguez on the left of the door, Chen on the right, Martinez in the center. Me 10 feet back, pressed against the wall. Martinez listened at the door for a moment. Silence. She nodded to Rodriguez. He swiped the master key card. The lock clicked green. In one fluid motion, he pushed the door open. "Police!" Martinez shouted, storming into the room, weapon drawn but low. "Victoria Thornton, show me your hands!" I waited for a scream, for the sound of a struggle. Instead, there was silence. "What is the meaning of this?" Victoria's voice. Cool, annoyed, as if room service had brought the wrong order. "Clear," Martinez called out. I stepped into the doorway. The room was a standard suite. King bed desk sitting area by the window. It smelled of Victoria's perfume, that cloying floral scent and stale air. Victoria was standing by the desk. She was wearing a silk robe, cream-colored, pristine. Her hair was brushed to a shine. Her makeup was flawless. She held a cup of tea in one hand, looking at the intruders with an expression of imperious disdain. Even now, even with guns pointed at her, she was performing. "Detective Martinez," she said, setting the cup down. "I assume you have a warrant, or is this just harassment?" "We have a warrant," Martinez said, stepping forward. "Victoria Rose Thornton, you are under arrest for the murder of Marcus Thornton." The mask didn't slip. Not yet. Victoria laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Murder. My husband died in an accident 6 years ago. You investigated it yourself." "We reopened the investigation," Martinez said. "Based on new evidence." "What evidence?" The ramblings of a senile old woman. Her eyes snapped to me. She saw me standing in the entryway. "Hello, Victoria," I said. For a second, her eyes narrowed. "You!" The word was a hiss. "You brought them here. You're violating a custody arrangement." "Where is he?" I asked. I scanned the room. The bed was made. The bathroom door was open. "Where is Oliver?" Victoria smiled. She took a step to the side, blocking my view of the alcove where the fold-out sofa was. "He's sleeping. He had a rough night. The poor darling is exhausted from all the stress you caused him." "Step away from the alcove," Martinez ordered. "He's my son." Victoria's voice rose the first crack in the porcelain facade. "You will not wake him up." Rodriguez moved forward gently but firmly, moving Victoria aside. I rushed past them to the sofa bed. Oliver was there. He was lying on his back, still in his pajamas. The covers were pulled up to his chin. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. "Oliver!" I knelt beside him. "Oliver, it's Grandma." He didn't turn his head. He blinked slowly, like a shutter closing in slow motion. "Ma." The word was thick, slurred. It rolled out of his mouth like he had marbles under his tongue. I grabbed his wrist. His pulse was slow, thready. I looked at his eyes. His pupils were blown wide black discs, swallowing the iris. My nursing training kicked in instantly. "He's not sleeping," I said, my voice rising in panic. I looked at Victoria. "What did you give him?" "Nothing," Victoria shrieked. "He's just tired. He's ataxic." I snapped, checking Oliver's muscle tone. His arm was limp heavy. "Dilated pupils, slurred speech, bradycardia." I spun around to face her. "Benzodiazepines. You gave him Valium Xanax." "What was it?" Victoria sneered. "I gave him something to calm him down. He was hysterical, screaming for you. I had to make him stop." I had to make him stop, just like she had to make Marcus stop. "You drugged him," Martinez said, her voice cold with disgust. "Chen, call the medics. Now. Possible overdose." "It's not an overdose." Victoria lunged forward, trying to reach the bed. "He's fine. He's mine. Get away from him." Martinez intercepted her. She grabbed Victoria's wrist and spun her around. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." "Get off me." Victoria fought. She wasn't the cool, composed socialite anymore. She was a wild animal. She kicked, scratched, thrashed. "You can't take him. He belongs to me. I gave birth to him. I own him. I own him. Not I love him. I own him." Rodriguez stepped in to help. They forced her arms back. The click of handcuffs echoed through the room. "Victoria Thornton," Martinez recited, "you have the right to remain silent." "I won't be silent," Victoria screamed. She twisted her head, her eyes locking onto me. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "You think you've won? You think this is over, Eleanor? I will bury you. I will burn your life to the ground." "You already tried?" I said, standing up from Oliver's side. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I wasn't afraid anymore. She was just a woman in handcuffs, a pathetic, broken thing. "And you failed." "Get her out of here," Martinez ordered. They dragged her toward the door. She was still screaming, shouting threats, shouting about lawyers, shouting about her rights. As she passed me, she stopped fighting for a split second. She leaned in, her breath hot on my face. "He'll never be normal," she whispered. "I broke him, just like I broke his father. You're saving a broken thing." I looked her in the eye. "He's not broken," I said. "He's just healing, and he's going to do it without you." Rodriguez shoved her forward. The door closed. Her screams faded down the hallway. The silence that followed was heavy. I turned back to the bed. Oliver was trying to sit up, but his coordination was gone. He swayed. "Grandma," he mumbled. Tears were leaking from his eyes. "You came." "I told you I would." I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled him into my arms. He felt heavy, limp, but alive. "I promised." "Is she gone?" "She's gone, baby. She's gone." "Am I in trouble?" "No. No, you are the bravest boy in the world." The EMTs arrived moments later. They bustled in with their equipment, professional and efficient. I stepped back to let them work, but I kept my hand on Oliver's ankle, maintaining physical contact. "Pulse is 58, the medic called out. "Respiration shallow but steady, pupils non-reactive." He looked at me. "Grandmother said potential benzo." "Yes," I said. "She admitted to sedating him to calm him down, probably last night and this morning." "Okay, we're going to transport him. IV fluids to flush it out. Monitoring. He'll be groggy for 24 hours, but he should be fine. He should be fine. The words were a balm to my soul. They loaded him onto the gurney. As they strapped him in, he panicked slightly, his eyes searching the room. "Grandma?" "I'm here," I said, grabbing his hand. "I'm coming with you. I'm not leaving you." I grabbed my bag. I pulled out the teddy bear. "Look who I found," I whispered, tucking it next to him. Oliver's hand closed around the frayed fur. He brought it to his nose and inhaled deeply. His eyes fluttered closed. "Little bear." He sighed. We rode the elevator down. The lobby was a scene of controlled chaos. Police cars were parked at the entrance lights flashing. Guests were staring. I saw them putting Victoria into the back of a squad car. She was still in her robe, but the fight had gone out of her. She sat slumped against the window, staring at nothing. She looked small. I climbed into the back of the ambulance with Oliver. The doors closed, shutting out the world. Shutting out Victoria. It was just us now. I smoothed the hair back from his forehead. He was fighting the drugs, trying to stay awake, trying to make sure I was real. "Go to sleep, Oliver," I said softly. "You can sleep now. No one is going to hurt you. No one is going to drug you. No one is going to tell you to be quiet." "Promise," he slurred. "I promise." He let out a long, shuddering breath. His grip on the teddy bear tightened, and then finally he let go. He drifted into a sleep that was drug-induced, yes, but also safe. I watched the city pass by through the rear windows. The nightmare was over. The monster was in a cage. My son's death had been avenged. My grandson was alive. I leaned my head back against the wall of the ambulance and closed my eyes. For the first time in 6 years, the knot of tension in my chest began to loosen. We had won. But as the ambulance siren wailed, cutting through the morning traffic, I knew the hard work was just beginning. Healing wasn't a moment. It was a process. But we had time now. We had all the time in the world. "We're going home, Marcus," I whispered to the air. "We're bringing him home." 3 months had passed since the morning at the Marriott. 3 months of detoxing from sedatives, 3 months of intensive therapy, 3 months of Oliver learning that his voice was not a weapon that would hurt him but a tool that could heal him. He spoke now. Not perfectly, his voice was still gravelly, and he sometimes stumbled over complex words, his throat tight from years of disuse. But he spoke. To me. To his teachers. To the child psychologist Dr. Eris, who sat with him 3 times a week and let him draw his nightmares until they lost their power. We stood outside the Superior Court on a biting March morning. The wind whipped around the gray stone columns, carrying the scent of impending rain. The building loomed above us, a fortress of granite and law. "Are you ready?" I asked, squeezing his hand. I was wearing gloves. He was holding his teddy bear, Little Bear, tucked inside his coat. Oliver looked up at me. He looked older than 8. He looked like a soldier who had survived a war no one else saw. "I've been ready for 6 years, Grandma," he rasped. We walked up the steps together. The courtroom was packed. It was a spectacle. The Christmas Eve murder had captured the state's attention. Reporters filled the back rows, pens poised. Sketch artists waited to capture the face of the Black Widow of Connecticut. I took my seat in the front row, directly behind the prosecution table. Oliver sat between me and Dr. Eris, who had been granted permission to support him. Patricia Chen sat on my other side, her presence a solid wall of comfort. Victoria was already at the defense table. She looked diminished. Prison had stripped her down to the studs. The honey-blonde hair was pulled back in a severe, unstyled ponytail. The designer cashmere was replaced by a drab blazer provided by her lawyer. Her skin was pale, waxy under the fluorescent lights, but her eyes remained the same, flat, reptilian. She scanned the room not with fear but with a cold, detached curiosity, as if she were watching a play she found slightly boring. When her eyes landed on us on Oliver, she didn't blink. She didn't smile. She just stared as if trying to mentally disassemble him. Oliver didn't look away. He held his bear tighter, but he kept his chin up. The trial lasted 5 days. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Harper, called me to the stand on the 3rd day. I took the oath. I sat in the box. I looked at the jury, 12 strangers who held our future in their hands. "State your name for the record." Eleanor Margaret Thornton. Harper walked me through the timeline. The years of living with Victoria, the gaslighting, the slow decline of my health. Mrs. Thornton, you stated the defendant was poisoning you. Yes. Small doses. Arsenic and thallium. I'm a nurse. I missed the signs because they mimic age and stress. But the lab results from the tea sample my grandson saved confirmed it. I looked at Victoria. She was killing me by inches, just to clear the path to Oliver's inheritance. Victoria scribbled something on a notepad, looking bored. Then came the video. The prosecution enters Exhibit A, Harper said, recovered from the phone of Ryan Mitchell and corroborated by Exhibit B, the recovered DVR footage from the Thornton residence. The screens mounted around the courtroom flickered to life. The silence in the room was absolute. We watched it, the hallway. Marcus pleading, his hands raised in surrender. Victoria's cold, impassive face. Is he in position? Ryan's voice tinny but clear. Yes. Push him. And the shove. The violent two-handed thrust that sent my son backward into the void. The sounds of the fall echoed in the quiet courtroom. Thud. Crack. Silence. And then Victoria's face on the screen. Looking into the lens. Smiling. Perfect. Now scream. I heard a juror gasp. Another covered her mouth. The judge looked away from the screen, his expression grim. I looked at the real Victoria. For the first time, the mask slipped. Her jaw clenched. She stared at the screen with a mixture of hatred and embarrassment. Not guilt. She wasn't ashamed of killing him. She was ashamed of being caught. Oliver took the stand the next afternoon. The judge cleared the courtroom of cameras for his testimony, though the reporters were allowed to stay. Dr. Aris walked him to the stand and sat in a chair nearby. The judge lowered his own chair to be closer to eye level. Hello, Oliver, the judge said gently. Do you know the difference between the truth and a lie? Yes, Oliver said. His voice was raspy, amplified by the microphone. A lie is what Mommy told everyone. The truth is what I saw. Please tell the jury what you saw. Oliver took a breath. He looked at me. I nodded. I saw Mommy push Daddy, he said. Simple. Brutal. I was on the stairs. Daddy was begging her to stop. But the man on the phone, Ryan, told her to do it. And after, Harper asked softly, after Daddy fell, Mommy walked over to me. Oliver's hand shook and he placed it flat on the railing to steady it. She grabbed my arm. It hurt. She smiled at me and said, Daddy had an accident, and if you ever tell anyone different, you'll have an accident too. The defense attorney, a high-priced shark named Sterling, rose for cross-examination. He knew he had to be careful. Oliver, Sterling said, his voice sickly sweet. You were very young when this happened. 2 years old. Isn't it possible you had a nightmare that you're confusing a bad dream with reality? Oliver looked at him. I didn't dream the man on the phone, Oliver said. And I didn't dream the video you just watched. But memories fade, son. Not this one, Oliver said. He pointed a small finger at Victoria. I remember her smile. Mothers aren't supposed to smile when daddies die. That's how I know it wasn't a dream. Sterling paused. He looked at the jury. He saw their faces hard, angry, protective. He knew he had lost. No further questions. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. We waited in a small conference room. I drank coffee I couldn't taste. Patricia paced. Oliver colored in a coloring book, staying inside the lines with intense focus. At 3:00 p.m., the bailiff knocked. They have a verdict. We filed back in. The air in the courtroom was electric, charged with the energy of judgment. Victoria stood. She didn't look at the jury. She looked straight ahead at the judge's bench, her chin high. In the matter of the people versus Victoria Thornton. The judge read, on the charge of murder in the first degree. How do you find? The foreperson, a middle-aged schoolteacher, stood up. She didn't look at Victoria. She looked at me. Guilty. A collective exhale went through the room. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder. Guilty. On the charge of child endangerment. Guilty. On the charge of attempted murder of Eleanor Thornton. Guilty. I closed my eyes. Tears hot and fast slipped down my cheeks. Victoria didn't scream. She didn't lunge. That would have been too human. Instead, she slowly turned her head. She looked at the jury, then at the judge, and finally at us. Her expression was one of profound, icy contempt. She looked like a queen surrounded by peasants who had dared to revolt. She leaned toward her lawyer loud enough for the microphone to catch. "Incompetent fools," she hissed. "All of you." It was the chilling arrogance of a psychopath who believed until the very end that she was smarter than everyone else. The sentencing hearing happened 2 weeks later. The judge was not lenient. The video, the poisoning, the psychological torture of a child, it painted a picture of a monster. "Victoria Thornton," the judge said, peering over his glasses. "In 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such calculated cruelty. You not only took a life, you tried to erase the lives of your son and mother-in-law to cover your tracks." Victoria stood shackled at the waist and ankles. "I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 20 years for conspiracy and attempted murder to be served consecutively." He banged the gavel. The sound was like a thunderclap clearing the air. "Take her away." As the bailiffs moved to escort her, Victoria stopped. She planted her feet. She turned fully toward the gallery. She locked eyes with me. Then her gaze slid down to Oliver. She didn't scream threats. She didn't vow revenge. She simply smiled that same faint, patronizing smile she had worn for 6 years. "He'll never forget me," she said softly. Her voice carried in the silent room. "I'm in his blood. I'm in his head. You can't scrub me out, Eleanor." I stood up. I put my hand on Oliver's shoulder. "You're right," I said, my voice steady. "He won't forget you. He will remember you as the bad thing that happened to him once. And every day he is happy, every day he is safe will be a victory over you." Victoria's smile faltered. For the first time she looked small, irrelevant. The bailiff shoved her forward. "Let's go." She walked out the side door, the chains rattling around her ankles. The door closed with a heavy thud. She was gone. 6 months later. The kitchen was flooded with September sunlight. It danced off the new yellow curtains I had hung, replacing Victoria's heavy gray drapes. I stood in the doorway holding a basket of laundry, watching Oliver at the stove. He was standing on a step stool, wielding a spatula with serious concentration. The smell of butter and eggs filled the air. "Low heat," he mumbled to himself, his voice much clearer now, the rasp almost gone. "Keep it moving. Creamy, not rubbery." He was making Harold's eggs. He was taller. He had grown 3 inches over the summer. His cheeks had filled out, losing that gaunt, haunted look. He was wearing a soccer jersey. He had joined the local team as a goalie. He liked blocking shots. He liked protecting the net. "Grandma?" He didn't turn around. "I made tea. It's on the table." I looked at the table. A mug of Earl Grey sat there. Steam curled lazily into the air. 6 months ago, a cup of tea was a weapon. It was a symbol of my own blindness. Now it was just tea. I walked over and picked it up. I took a sip. It was perfect. "Thank you, Chef Oliver." He grinned, turning around with a plate of scrambled eggs. "I think I got the texture right this time. Grandpa would be impressed." "Grandpa would be over the moon," I said, kissing the top of his head. "And so would your dad." Oliver's smile softened, but it didn't disappear. We talked about Marcus often now. We didn't whisper his name like a secret anymore. We brought him into the room with us. "I have a game today," Oliver said, sitting down and digging into his eggs. "Ryan, the other Ryan from school, said we're playing the Tigers. They're tough." "You're tougher," I said. "I know." He said it without arrogance. Just a fact. "Dr. Eris said I don't have to come in next week. She said I'm graduating to once a month." "That's wonderful news." He chewed thoughtfully. "Grandma." "Yes." "Do you think she thinks about us in prison?" He didn't say her name. He didn't call her Mommy anymore, just she. "I'm sure she does," I answered honestly. "She has a lot of time to think." "Good." Oliver took a sip of his orange juice. "I hope she thinks about us being happy. I hope it drives her crazy." I laughed. It was a startled, genuine sound. "That is a very healthy level of spite, Oliver. Dr. Eris calls it reclaiming the narrative," he said with a grin. We finished breakfast in the comfortable silence of a home that was truly ours. The The ghosts were gone. The secrets were dug up and bleached by the sun. Oliver took his plate to the sink. He grabbed his backpack and his soccer ball. "Ready for school?" I asked. "Ready." He stopped at the door. He looked back at the kitchen, at the sunlight, at the tea mug, at me. "I love you, Grandma," he said. 3 simple words, words that most people threw away without thinking. But from him, from the boy who had sealed his voice to survive, who had broken that seal to save my life, they were a miracle. "I love you too, Oliver." He opened the door and ran out into the bright autumn morning. I watched him go running down the driveway, a boy with a heavy past but a limitless future. I turned back to the kitchen. I picked up my tea. I walked to the window and looked out at the garden. The flowers were dying back for winter, but I knew the bulbs were sleeping underground waiting for spring. They always came back. Life always came back. I took a sip of tea, warm and sweet. It tasted like freedom.